Air from our broadcast facilities inside 30 Rock. Today's air schedule, it's an afternoon of baseball on NBC, and you'll see either the Western Division leading California Angels against the Detroit Tigers, or a matchup from the tough National League East, the Phillies who lead the East against the Montreal EXPOS. But first, it's Major League Baseball, an inside look at baseball, and a preview of today's game. Brought to you by light beer from Miller, everything you've always wanted in a beer and less. And by Wagner Power Painter, the airless paint sprayer that's faster and easier than a brush or a roller. Hello, everyone. Bill Mackatee and Mike Adamle at our NBC Sports Studios at 30 Rockefeller Plaza in New York. It is an afternoon of baseball here on NBC, and we'll have a conversation with Neil Allen, the relief pitcher for the New York Mets, who is currently involved in something of a controversy, and he might provide some insight into how right or wrong athletes deal with stress, and a look at baseball wives. But later this afternoon in Louisville, Kentucky, it'll be the 109th running of the Kentucky Derby. The race is scheduled to start at 5:38 Eastern Time. There is a 50-50 chance of rain at Churchill Downs. It is a wide-open field, the most wide open in recent years. And down in Houston, the Tournament Players Association stopped for the Houston Open, and Lee Trevino has taken some time away from our NBC broadcast booth to go back out on the course, and he has a two-shot lead going into today's third round.
Bill, last week when John McEnroe beat Czechoslovakia's Ivan Lendl in the WCT Finals in Dallas, Texas, Lendl took exception to McEnroe's fiery demeanor on the court. Now, Lendl expected to get revenge this week at the Tournament of Champions, but Ivan was beaten early in the tournament. McEnroe instead vented his wrath on another Czech, Tomas Schmid. And Big Mac won yesterday 6-3, 7-5, but also was fined $1,000 for shouting obscenities and calling Schmid a communist. John will have to control his temper this afternoon because he's going against Vitas Gerulaitis in the semifinals. Last Saturday night in El Paso, Texas, the Diablos beat the Beaumont Gators 35-21. Just another football game? Wrong. It was a minor league baseball contest in the Texas League. And the outrageous run production, courtesy of the friendly West Texas Winds. El Paso and Beaumont combined to score 56 runs, register 53 RBI, and they used up 6.5 dozen baseballs. Amazing. You know, a funny thing happened on the way to the ballpark to California's Doug DeCinces last week. It seems that his uniform was stolen, and he had to resort to wearing the Bat Boys jersey. Doug responded by hitting 2 home runs against his old teammates, the Baltimore Orioles, and athletes, being the superstitious lot that they are, expect the Bat Boy to be out one uniform. If I was DeCinces, I wouldn't give that up at all. You know, while Beaumont and El Paso were busy lighting up the scoreboard last week in the major leagues, umpires would like to short-circuit a few of the scoreboards around the league. Of all things this week, Diamond Vision, which can show videotape replays on stadium scoreboards, was the center of controversy. Richie Phillips, head of the Major League Umpires Association, warned if teams continue to show controversial plays, they will risk forfeiting games. Meanwhile, injuries to 2-star pitchers grabbed the headlines as Baltimore's Jim Palmer, 3-time Cy Young Award winner, was placed on the 21-day disabled list with back problems. And Nolan Ryan, the Major League's new career strikeout king, struck out 12 Mets on Monday, but in this pitch to Wally Backman, he pulled a hamstring muscle in his left leg. Ryan will miss at least the next 3 weeks of the season. Meanwhile, Philadelphia's Mike Schmidt continues to pound the rawhide. Here against the Cincinnati Reds, Schmidt nails home run number 7 for the season to go along with 23 RBI and a hefty .356 average. On Wednesday night, Johnny Bench reached another milestone in his great career by getting hit number 2,000 off of Steve Carlton and becoming only the second Cincinnati player to achieve that feat. And there to greet him at first base, an old teammate, Tony Perez. Over in Anaheim, California, Rod Carew is off to another sensational start. He is waving his magic wand at a phenomenal clip against American League pitchers. He's batting .500, 48 for 96. And for his career, Rod Carew, well, he has hit at least 300 in 14 consecutive seasons. We'll be back after this. When Jim Bouton wrote Ball 4 back in 1970, it stirred up quite a controversy. Now Bouton's wife, Bobby, has written a book of her own along with Nancy Marshall, wife of Mike Marshall, former relief star, and it too has caused some sparks to fly.
Jim Bouton and Mike Marshall, 2 headliners when they played, Bouton pitched in the World Series. Marshall, a Cy Young winner. And off the field, Bouton, the controversial author of Ball 4. Marshall, a nonconformist.
And now their former wives have taken over center stage. Bobby Bouton and Nancy Marshall have co-authored Home Games. They paint a picture of being a baseball wife, which is anything but glamorous.
It's an awfully rough life. And the glamour parts of it are so few and far between. And marriage is high risk, no matter what your husband is doing. And you add the added pressures of this profession, I think it's difficult. By the time we actually were out of Wallach into our separation, we had moved over 60 times.
Wow.
You know.
Did you ever unpack?
There were a couple of times I really thought about not doing it because we moved, I think it was 5 times in 2 months in 1970. But certainly, Dodger Stadium is a whole lot better than sitting in Rebel Stadium in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
We wound up in Durango, Mexico in 1977 when Jim was playing Double-A ball in the Mexican League. And in Durango, we didn't have a telephone, we didn't have a car, and there are no laundromats. So I wound up doing the family laundry and Jim's baseball laundry in the kitchen sink with a scrub board. That's glamorous.
We talked to Jim Bouton. He does not disagree with everything his former wife wrote.
It is difficult in the minor leagues. It's difficult for the player who rides the buses, and it's difficult for the wives who stay at home and wait for the buses to come back. It's not an easy life.
Nancy, are baseball players bad guys?
I liked Mike when I married him, and I like him now. But there's an ego that goes along with it that just won't quit.
It's tough living with someone that has a big ego, even though they need it. You need to have a good ego if you're going to be on the mound and you're going to be facing Pete Rose. You've got to know you're going to get him out.
You speak of little black address books of the other women on the road. Is that a fair picture of all baseball players?
I think it's more fair than it's unfair. I don't know what the percentage is, but certainly in talking to ball players who have been candid with me, that's part of the game. I think it really is.
Is baseball higher risk than other professions? Harder on a marriage, do you think, than other professions?
Well, we were talking to one baseball wife who was on the Minnesota Twins team, and she said out of the 25 players on the 65 championship team, 13 of them are divorced.
If a marriage doesn't work, it's the responsibility of the two people in the marriage. That's it. And they need to work that out themselves. And if they can't, and if a marriage doesn't make it, then it is their responsibility equally. And anybody who tries to blame an industry or blame other women or blame travel or blame something else is simply looking to avoid the responsibility.
A lot of people will meet somebody. Jim met another woman and fell in love with her. That happens to everybody, whether you're a school teacher or a doctor, if you play baseball. But the nonchalance that goes on with the women in baseball bothers me. You know, they laugh at these women. And I guess I question whether they can treat women as jokes and larks on the road and then come back home and treat their wife as a viable person.
Are there any baseball players who are faithful husbands?
I'd be willing to bet any money Tommy John is. I'd bet my life on it.
One player?
Well, don't press us.
I'm standing next to two of the wives of the Detroit Tigers, Wanda Wilcox and Angie Leach. What effect did that book have on you?
Well, I think it made me appreciate my husband a lot more. Just made me think about the effect that baseball's had on both of our lives, but just made me realize how lucky I am that I have a good, solid marriage.
It reminded me of things that I had been through. It didn't make a great impact on me. It didn't change the way I felt about the game or my husband. And I found it entertaining reading, but again, no big change.
What about the wheel that Nancy Marshall talks about?
Well, you know, I had gotten pro baseball in 1968, and I gave up a modeling career at that time, and I decided that Milt needed me more than I needed me. So I devoted myself and my time to him and his career and knew that my time would come again when I would have the opportunity to do what I wanted to do.
I think what Nancy was trying to say and what she realized later on in her marriage, too late, unfortunately, that it's important that you have your own self-identity and you not make your husband and his career the most important thing in your life. And I think that in our case, I've made sure I've gone to college and I'm teaching now, and I have a lot of interests other than Rick in baseball.
She used a line in the piece talking about, and I have to get a quick answer, about ego, that they use nonchalance and jokes on the road and then come home and not make the wife a viable person. You agree with that?
Not really, no. I think that the guys have to really concentrate on the game. I don't think they're worrying about whether or not they're making their wife a viable person or not. I think the wife has to be a strong, independent person to begin with to stay in this game and to survive.
It's really a rough life, but you just have to be strong.
And you two are strong, and we thank you. Wanda Wilcox, Angie Leach. And now let's go back to 30 Rock.
Coming up, we'll be talking to the Mets' troubled relief pitcher, Neil Allen. Can he regain the form that made him one of the National League's best relief hurlers? Right after this. Last night, the New York Mets beat the Cincinnati Reds to break a 5-game losing streak in extra innings 7-4. Part of their problems recently has been in the relief department, where Neil Allen has faltered. He's here in our studios to talk about some of his problems.
Mets pitcher Neil Allen spent the first part of this week making headlines in what you'd have to term very unusual circumstances. It involved missing the Mets game last Sunday, disclosing he had a drinking problem, and finally doctors determining that Neil's problem was not as serious as he had thought, but really stress-related. Neil Allen is with us in our NBC Sports studios today here in New York. And Neil, first of all, what has the last couple of weeks been like for you, and how have your teammates reacted to all of this?
Well, I tell you, it's been one of the hardest times of my entire life. I know that when you're a little boy growing up, you just wish that you want everything to be peaches and cream your whole life. Neil Allen has experienced a whole month of April that I don't wish on no one. It's been hard. It's been hard on my teammates because every time they pick up a paper or magazine, I'm in there, and it hasn't been good press. It's been hard times, and a lot of it I have brought on myself. I've been struggling on the mound quite a bit, and I think that my teammates realize that I've been trying as hard as I possibly can, but I think that I have a tendency to take more into my hands than I can possibly do, and that's what happened to me. That's why I've resolved into, right now I'm going to see a doctor on stress right now to make me relax in my job a little bit more because I'm trying to put too much pressure on myself.
When this all started last Sunday and you spoke with Frank Cashin, the general manager of the Mets, about missing the game on Sunday, and you indicated that your wife Linda, it was an illness with her and that was why you couldn't be at the game, why did you not tell the truth in that situation?
Because I felt that Neil Allen, in order to be a professional, you got to face things like a professional. It got to the point when April, the last day, last week, last Saturday, I was pitching against Atlanta. I had a rough time, and I just was so completely mentally drained and frustrated that I told myself the next day I woke up and I looked at my wife and I just said, you know, honey, I'm not going. I can't make it. I just cannot make it. My wife, you know, she pleaded with me to go, and I said no. And I called, and I drug my wife's name into it by lying, saying that my wife was ill, and she wasn't. I'm sorry that I drugged my wife into it, but that just shows you what kind of month it really resulted to, that I had to lie and involve my family. I'm ashamed of myself for what happened there in that episode. But later on that evening, I called Frank Cashin. I apologized for that, and I said to Frank that I need some help to straighten out my personal life and my problems and just to get my head straight together.
What came out in the press was that you had a drinking problem. First of all, do you have a drinking problem? And if you do, is it stress-related? Is it something that came about because it's tough for a 25-year-old to handle the pressures of the big leagues and playing in a city like New York?
No, I believe that what exactly happened to me, Neil Allen in no way, shape, or form has a drinking problem. That is very obvious. My teammates, my family, anyone that knows me knows that there is no way that is any way associated with me. My teammates have been behind me 110% through this thing. And as far as the press of New York City and everywhere else, they have a job to do, just as Neil Allen does. I have no personal grudges or vendetta against no press in any way, shape, or form. They have a job to do just as I do. They did what they think they were doing right, and I did what I thought was right. So naturally we clashed. This thing came to a head, and in the result, it made papers throughout the nation. It's over with, it's done, and after today, I would not like to rehash it no more.
Okay, Neil, thank you very much for being with us today. Michael.
Thank you, Bill. And as you look at this 30 Rock fact about Reggie Jackson, who will be featured in one of our 2 games this afternoon, we'll be with you with scores and highlights and updates throughout the day. So sit back, relax. Baseball is next on NBC.
Monday on Love Sydney.
Marry her.
Will Lori really go through with it and tie the knot? And on Family Ties, will Mallory's friend have to?
She's pregnant.
Then it's the Academy of Country Music Awards with the biggest songs and stars of the year. Hosted by John Schneider, Tammy Wynette, and Jerry Reed. See it all
Monday.
Top of the 9th last night in Montreal with Jeff Reardon sidelined by a bad back. Bryn Smith is the man Bill Burton calls on in relief, but Tony Perez takes him downtown with 2 aboard. A 2-all tie snapped, and the Phillies are on their way to a 5-2 victory. Tony Perez, who will be 41 a week from today, has driven in 21 runs this year, and he's batting 3:45. They call on another of the Wheeze kids to wrap it up, 40-year-old Ron Reed. The tying run at the plate is the league's batting leader, Andre Dawson. 2 aboard, 2 out, last of the 9th. Reed fans Dawson, the Philly record 15-8. They lead the Cards by 2 in the National League East. NBC Sports presents the Major League Baseball Game of the Week. Today from Olympic Stadium, it's the Philadelphia Phillies versus the Montreal EXPOS, and the Game of the Week is brought to you by Light Beer from Miller. Everything you've always wanted in a beer and less. By Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? By Electric Shave. Electric Shave does for an electric razor what lather does for a blade. And by IBM. We're dedicated to the office, where it is now and where it will be. Overcast day at Olympic Stadium in Montreal. Bill Gullickson will pitch for the Expos. Larry Christenson will go for the Phillies. Hi, everybody. Bob Costas with Tony Kubek and sitting alongside Mike Schmidt on a hitting tear at the moment, and I would guess helped at least a little bit by the hot streak that Tony Perez has been in.
Well, no question, Bobby. It seems like when I'm not getting a hit now, I'm able to get down to first base with a walk, and I got 26 runs scored, which is, as far as I'm concerned, quite a lot for this time of year, and it's because of Tony Perez, and not only Tony, but Bo Diaz, who's hit a couple of 3-run home runs in the last few ball games. We're winning because of Tony Perez right now. Key hits, great hitter with men on base, and I just hope he can play like he's 25 years old and be out there every day all year.
Top of the 9th, last night in Montreal, with Jeff Reardon sidelined by a bad back. Bryn Smith is the man Bill Burton calls on in relief, but Tony Perez takes him downtown with 2 aboard. A 2-all tie snapped, and the Phillies are on their way to a 5-2 victory. Tony Perez, who will be 41 a week from today, has driven in 21 runs this year, and he's batting .345. They call on another of the Wheeze kids to wrap it up, 40-year-old Ron Reed. The tying run at the plate is the league's batting leader, Andre Dawson. 2 aboard, 2 out, last of the 9th. Reed fans Dawson, the Philly record 15-8. They lead the Cards by 2 in the National League East. NBC Sports presents the Major League Baseball Game of the Week. Today from Olympic Stadium, it's the Philadelphia Phillies versus the Montreal EXPOS, and the Game of the Week is brought to you by Light Beer from Miller. Everything you've always wanted in a beer and less. By Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? By Electric Shave. Electric Shave does for an electric razor what lather does for a blade. And by IBM. We're dedicated to the office, where it is now and where it will be. Overcast day at Olympic Stadium in Montreal. Bill Gullickson will pitch for the Expos. Larry Christenson will go for the Phillies. Hi, everybody. Bob Costas with Tony Kubek and sitting alongside Mike Schmidt on a hitting tear at the moment, and I would guess helped at least a little bit by the hot streak that Tony Perez has been in.
Well, no question, Bobby. It seems like when I'm not getting a hit now, I'm able to get down to first base with a walk, and I got 26 runs scored, which is, as far as I'm concerned, quite a lot for this time of year, and it's because of Tony Perez, and not only Tony, but Bo Diaz, who's hit a couple of 3-run home runs in the last few ball games. We're winning because of Tony Perez right now. Key hits, great hitter with men on base, and I just hope he can play like he's 25 years old and be out there every day all year.
Briefly, it's cool, it's early season, there are open dates. What happens to the Wheeze kids when the dog days arrive?
That's a good question. I guess this is the first year we've, or anybody has had a collection of older players like we have in Philadelphia, which is why we're not counting our chips right now. We realize we're in first place, and we realize we're old. So let's just wait until July, August, when we see you again, hopefully on the Game of the Week, and we can discuss that further.
Let's go over to Tony Kubek now with another of the game's greatest players, Andre Dawson.
All right, Bob. Hawk, when they talk about this Montreal ball club as being contenders in the Eastern Division National League, they talk about the tremendous ability, and yet
some people, maybe unfairly, have hung the tag on the ball club that some do not perform under pressure. How do you answer that?
Well, I think we really haven't been as consistent as we're capable of, despite the talent and credibility that we do have here. We have been over-aggressive at times and unaggressive at other times, and we haven't performed with the consistency as far as our pitching and our timely hitting, all falling together at the same time. And I think in order to have a championship caliber ball club or be a pennant contender, you got to do those things and do them consistently. So consistently, you got to perform the basics and the fundamentals and go up and be aggressive and not over-aggressive.
All right, Andre Dawson, our thanks. We'll be back to Olympic Stadium in Montreal with the starting lineups right after this message.
All right, we're up 15. We got this game won. Yeah, you guys are buying a light beer from Miller. Yeah, let's Philly. One out to go. Yeah, what can he do to us now?
Hey, keep the change. Here's Rodney!
Any pinch hitters left? Here I am. Come on, ladies!
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
Hey, wait a minute. This game isn't over yet. I caught that ball.
Suppose your loved one's heart and breathing stopped unexpectedly. Would you know what to do? The answer is CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation.
Don't stand by helplessly while a loved one is dying.
Help save a life. Learn the life-saving techniques of CPR. Call your local chapter of the American Red Cross or the American Heart Association for information about CPR training.
Learn the life-saving skills of CPR and help save a loved one's life. Baseball cares.
The preceding announcement was furnished by Major League Baseball in cooperation with the Major League Baseball Players Association.
Hi, I'm Claude Osteen, pitching coach of the Phillies. I'm here to give you today's lineup. Hitting first and leading off for the Phillies, Pete Rose, Mr. Baseball. Hitting second, Gary Matthews. Gary is a streak hitter, and he's about ready to break loose for us. Hitting third, Mr. Power himself, Mike Schmidt. Hitting fourth, Tony Perez, playing first base. Tony Perez has done everything for us, driving all the runs, been a Super Bowl player for us. Hitting fifth, Bo Diaz, the catcher. Bo is Mr. Three-run homer himself. Hitting sixth, Gary Maddox, Mr. Center Field. Hitting seventh, Larry Milburn, filling in for Joe Morgan today, who's injured. Hitting eighth, Ivan De Jesus, great shortstop. And hitting ninth, Larry Christenson. Larry's the kind of pitcher that'll give you everything he's got, a power pitcher, and he should be on his game today.
Olympic Stadium, Montreal, Quebec, Canada. You can see the wet spots where balls might scoot. Pete Rose and Tony Perez were telling us about it being the worst artificial surface of all those in baseball, at least the National League. There are a lot of seams, a lot of rough spots, and because it is so wore out, the ball just scoots through this infield. They say worse than St. Louis, Bob.
It's also difficult on a sunny day to pick up the ball against this faded AstroTurf, but it being as overcast as it is today, it shouldn't be as much of a problem as usual. The defense, Raines, Dawson, Cromartie left to right in the outfield. Wallach is the third baseman. Spire, who had lost his shortstop job to Brian Little, isn't short today because Doug Flynn is out of the lineup with Little at second base, Oliver the first baseman. Gary Carter, bothered by bronchitis, will not catch. Bobby Ramos is the catcher for the Expos, calling the pitches for Bill Gullickson, Tony.
Bill Gullickson, a man you might recall in 1980, that was in September, right in this ballpark against the Cubs, struck out 18. One short of the record of 19 held by Seaver Carlton and Nolan Ryan. this is a great collection of young pitchers that Galen Cisco, the pitching coaches, put together. They are still learning. They are still young. 2 kinds of sliders. 3 kinds of fastballs for Gullickson, and he throws a forkball for a straight change.
Last year, Gullickson was 12-14, came on strong in the second half when his ERA was 3.13. He was a tough luck pitcher. In 8 of his 14 losses, the Expos scored either 1 run or were shut out. Here's Pete Rose, 0 for 4 last night, and at .236 on the young season.
Now appearing in his 646th consecutive game. He has not yet missed a game in a Phillies uniform. Just an incredible story.
Some Pete Rose fans are going to get mad at me. 256 for Pete Rose, not 236, as he fouls this one away. There's a lot of foul ground in Montreal, but this one is beyond the reach of Wallach and Ramos. Pete was telling us before the game he was upset. He says, here I am on an artificial surface field, and last night I hit the ball in the air 3 times and struck out once. You got to hit the ball on the ground to take advantage of the artificial surface.
Rose, in 20 years before this year, had missed only 80 games. Since 1970, he has missed just 9 ball games.
1-1 pitch. Hit his bat for a foul ball.
He doesn't like it. He doesn't like it. That's Dutch Renner behind the plate. You can hear his voice boom all over. It was a slider or a cut fastball that ran in on the fist. You might hear him. Let's listen if we can pick up the sound. Rose wants him to ask another umpire. Show you how much one pitch means in a baseball game to Rose. The count was 1-1. Let's see what it hits. Nope, it went off the glove. And then the shin guard, I don't think that hit anything, and yet Dutch Renner, by sound, probably more than sight, said it got a piece of the bat, and that replay showed it didn't. Pete wanted him to ask the third base umpire down there, Lee Wire.
Well, the replay proved Pete's case pretty conclusively. Back live, and the 1-2 pitch is fouled away. Dutch Renner at the home plate umpire, Lanny Harris at first, Terry Tata at second, and Lee Wire, as Tony mentioned, the umpire at third. Pete Rose needs exactly 300 hits to pass Ty Cobb for the all-time leadership in that category. Cobb is at 4,191, and Rose is at 3,892. 2 balls and 2 strikes.
Count might have been 3-1. It's 2 balls, 2 strikes. As we see the replay from another angle, the ball maybe 6 inches beneath the fist. Pete can't believe it.
Hit hard, but right at Brian Little. And Rose is out of there. So Pete, who hit just 271 last year and under 260 in the second half, is around the 250 mark this year. And not to take anything away from one of the greatest players that the game has ever known, but I guess it's legitimate to ask the question, at age 42, whether or not he can produce the 300 hits he needs to pass Cobb.
Well, when you look at Pete Rose's stats in September over the last few years, they have gone down considerably as far as batting average and run production.
Gary Matthews, the left fielder, off to a slow start at 229.
Well, he's an interesting ball club. I don't think there's any question, in spite of what Mike Schmidt posed the question. He said he didn't know what's going to happen either. But I think they're going to have to get a lot out of their bench. I think Von Hayes, kid they got in a 5-player deal, 5-for-1 with Cleveland, is going to become very important to this ball club sometime during this season. Out now with a strained right shoulder.
Good breaking ball from Gullickson. He's ahead of Matthews 0-2. Last night, both starters pitched extremely well. Charlie Lee for the Expos, John Denny for the Phillies. Neither was involved in the decision. A ball and 2 strikes to Matthews. In the air, down the left field line, possible trouble, foul ball.
Might have been the forkball that Matthews was way out in front, hit it on the end of the bat. But it was up in the strike zone. Now Ramos is going to go out and have a talk. Most of the ball games have been cut by Carter. Carter spent about 5 days out with an injured elbow, and teams ran wild on the catchers. They were 12 for 12. It's either Blackwell or Ramos who will do the catching.
Ramos is a native of Havana, Cuba. emigrated to Miami at the age of 13, played briefly with the Yankees last year before being dealt to the Expos. Wide and high, 2-2.
Interesting shot that you might have seen from that center field camera, how Ramos tried to decoy Matthews. Matthews, one of the hitters who will swing that bat around and look down after the signal is given to the catcher. Watch Ramos decoy inside. Now he will shift outside in case Matthews had looked back at the pitch to find out where it was. Cut fastball that got away from him. See if we get Gary peeking down. Not this time. Ow! Right up the leg.
Got Gullickson. Spire goes over to knock it down. It's a base hit for Matthews. Gullickson doesn't appear to be too badly hurt.
Right off the ankle, wasn't it, Bobby?
Looked that way, but he doesn't appear to be in much pain, Tony. Let's take another look at it.
Matthews, the ball outside part of the plate in low.
Instep.
Right off the left ankle or instep of Gullickson. Matthews went with that ball very well. Matthews tough to defense. See the ball in the right field corner last night, a line out. He just pulled one down the left field line, barely fouled, and then he hits one up the middle. He used the whole field.
So Gullickson will take a couple of warm-ups just to make sure he's all right.
The strength of this ball club was supposed to be their pitching staff. Reardon is down with a bad back. Woody Fryman has elbow problems. They wonder if he'll ever pitch again in a Major League uniform. Sanderson nearly severely injured when he was spiked by Claudell Washington, just missed the Achilles tendon. So they don't need another one out there.
Mike Schmidt off to a torrid start. In his last 6 games, he's 13 for 21 with 10 RBIs, and the seasonal total's 356, 7 and 23. Trails Dale Murphy of Atlanta, who has 8 home runs, by 1 for the leadership at this stage in the National League, and as seems to always be the case, he leads the league in walks, and he leads in on-base percentage. His on-base percentage is .510.
And how Mike Schmidt's hitting style has changed over the last 3 years. When he was up on the plate trying to pull everything, now he is way off the plate, dives into the ball, and just, he can take pitchers' best sliders and drive them to right center field 400, 420 feet. Completely changed his philosophy of hitting over the last 3 years.
You heard Mike mention before the game how all the walks he's been getting and the hot hitting of Perez and Diaz behind him have really upped his runs scored total. He leads the league in that category with 26. Matthews is the runner at first. He's singled with 1 out.
Some interesting contrast in these 2 ball clubs who will be contenders right into September for the Eastern Division, along with the Cardinals, I'm sure, maybe Pittsburgh if they come along.
Hit hard and through for the second base hit of the inning. Matthews will stop at second. Raines juggled it, but Matthews isn't going anywhere. 2 on, 1 out.
You know, when you look at this Phillies ball club, Bob, you would think with their age that they would not have more stolen bases than Montreal, and yet they do. They're outstolen Montreal 15-13. Bases on balls. That's a very big thing that people do not figure. Now we're talking on-base percentage. Phillies get a lot of bases on balls, even though Morgan's out today. But they score a quarter of those base-on-ball runs. Gotten about 113 to this point. The other side of the field, Montreal rarely gets bases on balls.
Tony Perez has driven home more runs than any active National Leaguer, and he's second among all active players to Carl Yastrzemski of the Red Sox. 2 on, 1 out. Perez in the cleanup spot. Takes a good breaking ball for a strike. Dutch Rennert, a very animated home plate umpire, Tony.
Oshkosh, Wisconsin's best. See him referee some basketball in my part of the country in the off-season, high school, now college. Said they didn't have scoreboards in the minor leagues when he broke in. He had to tell the people what the count was.
It's 0-1 now. Up and in, 1-1. Perez had the 3-run homer, his second round tripper of the year in the 9th to win the ball game last night.
Interesting pitch right there. Something that people have said of this Montreal staff. They're young and they want to throw strikes. They rarely give up walks. That they should pitch inside more. Keep hitters off the plate. There was a pitch to Perez from Gullickson. Tony, a good breaking ball hitter.
Last year with the Red Sox, with Carl Yastrzemski occupying the DH spot and the feeling being that Perez could not play consistently at first base, he got less than 200 at-bats. Now off to one of the most torrid starts of his career, and he'll be 41 in a week.
He's a good cripple shooter at pickoff, but Little was sneaking back. See if they give him a fastball. There's Matthews at second. See if they give him a fastball behind the count.
2-1 pitch. Ball's behind, 3-1. Tony, as you look at a guy like Perez, there are other people in this park who are certain Hall of Famers. Rose, Carlton, Schmidt, if he keeps going the way he's been going. But Perez could make quite a case. 11 straight years between 67 and 77, he had 90 RBIs or better.
Don't forget Lefty.
Did I fail to say Steve Carlton? He draws a walk to load him.
He's going to win his 300th game sometime this year. In fact, something very unusual may happen for this Phillies ball club. First time in baseball history, a man will get his 4,000th base hit. And the pitcher will win his 300th game in the same season. Rose and Carlton.
You have a guy like Joe Morgan. Some people might not realize what a great player he has been through his career. In my mind, should be a Hall of Famer. Then you have a Gary Carter or an Andre Dawson who have the tools to become Hall of Famers. Bill Verdon came over from Houston this year, replaced Jim Fanning at the Expo helm. Bases loaded. Diaz, the hitter, takes a strike. Last year, Diaz made a quantum leap in his offensive production. In '81, with the Indians, he had 7 homers, drove in 38. Last year, with the Phils, he had 18 homers and drove in 85. He's behind 0-2.
Pat Corrales has wanted Diaz for a long time. When he was at Texas, managing down there, he tried to get Diaz. He is familiar with him from winter baseball. Corrales sitting to the left of your screen, back to obviously very relaxed manager because his team has been pitching very well and they've been swinging the bats as a team exceptionally well. Scoring a lot of runs over the last half-dozen games.
They lead the Cardinals by 2, the Expos by 2.5 in the National League East at this early stage. Diaz had a grand slammer and a big one earlier this year on the 13th of April. 2 out, losing by 3 last of the 9th. He hits the slam against Neil Allen of the Mets. Turned a 9-6 deficit into a dramatic 10-9 win at Philadelphia.
He's been playing hurt. He had a home plate collision. In fact, very few thought he'd play yesterday, let alone today.
After Rose grounded out, Matthews and Schmidt singled. Perez walked. The bases are loaded with 1 down. Held up on it. It's 2-2. Gullickson has been an excellent control pitcher. Very good strikeout to walk ratio, and he's averaged less than 2.5 walks per 9 innings throughout his career.
Good double play possibility if he can sink the ball down low on Diaz.
Up the middle and through for a base hit. At least 2 will score. Fielded cleanly by Dawson out there. Perez must stop at second base. It's 2-0 Phillies.
And out will pop Galen Cisco, the pitching coach. How many times you see that base on ball stuck in the middle of an inning where it keeps a rally going? See the replay. Ramos sets up outside. Poor follow through. Not hit that hard. Did that get catch part of his bare hand?
I don't think so. It's instinctive to swipe at it that way, but it probably does you more harm than good. Chances are you won't field it, and chances are pretty good that if it clips your hand, you're going to wind up hurt.
It's always been a controversy among pitching coaches and managers as to whether or not to take a youngster like Gullickson and make him stop with a good follow-through. Some people say yes, they should, especially on the artificial surface. He becomes the 5th infielder, but you run the risk if you change his follow-through that he loses something off the pitch and maybe he'll hurt his arm. Some say, yeah, change it, and some say, don't do it. You might hurt the kid.
Center fielder Gary Maddox off to a fast start himself at 3:45. Takes strike 1.
He's been hot lately, too. In fact, he got so hot that they sent the youngster Bob Dernier down. He really was a hot player for them last year when Phillies got into gear. Dernier had a good May last year.
2 quick strikes to Maddox. This guy's a better hitter than people might realize, Tony. He's a lifetime 287 man. Hit 330 for the Phillies a few years ago.
Well, I think he's got a little rejuvenated when he had some pressure put on last year, almost lost a job, then was trade bait during the offseason because of Dernier. He had to push himself a little bit. He can really run the ball down in the outfield. 2 center fielders today, as good as anybody in the game, both capable of playing very shallow. Dawson right now is playing a little bit deeper than a roamer in a softball game. Maddox plays just a shallow. Look at that. A lot of room behind him, but he has confidence that he can go back.
Gullickson ahead of Maddox, 0-2. Stays alive with the foul ball down the right side. Tony, they don't limit the Gold Glove any longer to specific outfield positions, so 3 center fielders could receive Gold Gloves, and I believe 3 did in the National League last year with Maddox, Dawson, and Dale Murphy.
And I think that's wrong.
Well, you might be right. Is it wrong?
Yeah, if the guy plays right field, he's outstanding in his position. He should get it for being a right fielder, not just an outfield.
Another foul ball.
I mean, there are certain ballparks for right field. Fenway Park is one, is tougher than center field. Yankee Stadium left field is tougher than center field. Center field isn't always the most demanding outfield position.
I thought you meant the fact that I gave was wrong, rather than the philosophy was wrong.
Never question you on that.
0-2 pitch. Another foul, and he stays alive. So because more than one center fielder can win it, Maddox has won 8 consecutive Gold Gloves. Dawson has won 3 consecutive Gold Gloves. The record for Gold Gloves by an outfielder is Roberto Clemente, who won 12. Willie Mays had 11. The 5th foul ball by Maddox in this at-bat after the count went to 0-2.
Gullickson experiencing one of the problems that some young pitchers experience off and on, finishing off hitters. I think a guy that once struck out 18 in a game could just wipe a hitter away with 5 or 6 good pitches he has. Still got the ball up in the strike zone.
2 on, 1 out, top half of the first. 2 already home for the Phillies. Another foul.
Makes a good pitch. Low and outside, right where Ramos set up, but he fouls it back.
Unofficially, Gullickson has already thrown 32 pitches in this first inning.
Good crowd here in this ballpark. Whoops, that fellow was sleeping. That woke him up.
Oh mon Dieu, he exclaims as the ball approaches his noggin.
Maddox, when he got 2 strikes, went into more of a crouch, spread out. Oh, another 6 inches, barely taking a stride, just trying to put the ball in play. Sign of a veteran hitter.
1-2 pitch from Gullickson to Maddox.
He's not striding at all, is he? Just lifts up the heel and right back in the same spot. No head movement, just saying, get that part of the bat on the ball. He's making Gullickson work. Now he's going back to the dugout. I don't think... He may have broken his bat as he fouled that one off.
The on-deck hitter is Larry Milburn. Joe Morgan was hit hard on a takeout slide on a possible double play by Gary Carter last night and injured a hamstring a bit, so the switch hitter Milburn replaces him today at second base. This is going to be quite a managing challenge for Pat Corrales this year. He has older players, he has players of diverse skills, and how he manipulates the lineup and how he keeps them rested through July and August and into September may tell the story for this Philly club. Well, finally, Gullickson wins the extended battle with Maddox. We'll be back with Milburn's at-bat after we check with 30 Rock in New York.
Thank you, Bob. And in Detroit, the Tigers and the Angels, Lou Whitaker, a lead-off home run off of Jeff Zahn to the opposite field. Brian Downing up the wall, but it's over. Lou Whitaker led off last night with a home run. He now has 2 in 2 days and 2 for the year. 1-0 Tigers in the second. Let's go back to Montreal.
And the much-traveled Larry Milburn steps in. He's been with Houston, Seattle, the Yankees, the Twins, the Indians. The last 3 all last season.
He came in that ball game last night, Bob, for Morgan, and he may have saved the game with an outstanding play and off-balance throw behind second base. He can play shortstop, as he did for the Yankees in the playoffs, part of the World Series. Second base, third base, pinch hit, pinch run. They will see a lot of service this bench this year for the Phillies.
The Phils have a stretch just after the All-Star break where they played 21 games in 20 days. Players like Hayes and Milburn and Gross. They'll be very, very important then, Tony.
Ozzie Virgil's son, who's a coach in San Diego, is going to be very important too, because Diaz is not going to be able to catch on 150. And they say Virgil's really improved and throwing very well.
Popped up. Oliver calls for it. Just in foul ground, he takes it. Gullickson gets out of the inning, but not before a walk and 3 singles produce 2 Philly runs, and at the end of half an inning at Olympic Stadium, Phil's 2, Expos coming up.
Hello there, I'm Galen Cisco, the pitching coach of the Montreal EXPOS. At this time, I'd like to give you Bill Burton's lineup for the day. Leading off is Timmy Raines, our fleet little left fielder, very exciting on the bases. Batting second, Warren Cromartie. Batting third, Andre Dawson, one of the most exciting in the game. Batting fourth and cleanup, Al Oliver. Batting fifth and playing third base, Timmy Wallach. Batting sixth and playing shortstop, Chris Spire. Batting seventh in place of Gary Carter, Bobby Ramos. Batting eighth and playing second base, Brian Little. And pitching for the Expos today will be Bill Gullickson, who pitched an outstanding game 2 years ago. He struck out 18 Cubs in one 9-inning game. One of the most outstanding performances that I've seen since I've been in the game.
But he had a very, very long top of the first. Gullickson, about 25, 30 minutes. There's the defense. Raines. Behind Christenson, defensively, it'll be Matthews, Maddox, and Rose in the outfield. Schmidt, De Jesus, Milburn. Perez at first. Diaz, the catcher. And there's Christenson, who's been a tough luck pitcher. Had a lot of injuries. It'll be interesting to see. He warmed up about 30 minutes ago before his pitches now, how he'll withstand that long cool spell on the bench.
Tony, he had his 3rd elbow operation in the offseason this year to remove some loose particles in that elbow. He's also had a broken collarbone at another time in his career. This is his 9th big league season. Opens with a strike to Tim Raines. Raines is hitting .236. He's over 300 at .306 from the left side, but he's at .074 as a right-handed batter.
Schmidt well up in front of the bag. Perez up tight at first base.
2 quick strikes.
Tim's had a rough start.
Because the batting average is so low and Raines does not walk that often, he's drawn 11 free passes this year, a respectable figure, but not an especially high one for a leadoff man. It's cut down his opportunities to steal. He's swiped 6 this season. He's led the National League in that category each of his first 2 years, with 71 in the strike-shortened season of '81 and then 78 last year.
Christensen, a guy with a very, very live arm. He's had back problems coming off a pulled hamstring for his last start. He's in the low 90s. There's a curveball, has a good slider, good straight change. Excellent move to first base if somebody should get on. You look at the ability, and he's a well-trained athlete. Some people think he trains too hard. He stretches the muscles too much, and that's why he gets injured.
Misses outside, so after 2 quick strikes, now the count is out full to Raines.
With that very easy delivery that he has, stands almost straight up, lands on that front foot, takes a lot of jarring the arm. His fastball looks a lot quicker to a hitter.
Christensen, like Gullickson, is the type of pitcher who doesn't walk many, but here's a leadoff free pass to Raines. Cromartie off to a .283 start. He's won his right field job back, a combination of the strong spring training that Cromartie had and the lingering effects of Terry Francona's knee injury from last season. He's got his job back.
But to take a quick look over at Christensen, too, to see if he uses the move. He uses a move that some say is a balk. He bends that left knee and then goes to first base. He's very quick. Raines probably does already. Will try and draw some throws to see if he can read them. Most pitchers won't show their good move until they absolutely want to pick a guy off.
Chases him back. Last year, in stealing 78 bases, Raines was caught stealing 16 times, but that's misleading. He was only thrown out by the catcher 6 times. The other 10 were pickoffs. It's almost impossible. Even if you get a pitcher with a quick move to the plate, a clean release, and a clean tag, it's almost impossible to catch Raines. Steve Boros.
Hey!
Oh, it didn't come off.
Lanny Harris, first base umpire, had to give a quick look. He came back standing up. Perez swiped tag, didn't knock him off the base, and then he almost went on his own.
Well, the replay backed the umpire up that time. The foot did come off for an instant, but he got it back before Perez's tag.
Pitch out.
Steve Boros, now the manager of the Oakland A's, used to be the first base coach and occupied the first base box with the stopwatch so he could time the runners and the pitchers' moves. When he was the first base coach for the Expos, he figured that it took Raines 11 strides and a slide to get to second base, and he did it in 3.2 seconds. He's off. Here's the throw, and he's got the steal. Boros also figured that a reasonably quick delivery to the plate by a pitcher took 1.4 seconds, and a quick release by the catcher took 2 seconds flat, so you figure it out. The mathematics are all in Raines' favor. Even if you do everything right and the throw is right on the money, you're not going to have much chance to get it.
Diaz sinks the ball to second base. Luckily, they prevented it from going to the outfield, where they held Raines to only second.
Now a ground ball to the right side would advance him to third. Cromartie hits it that way, but foul.
You know, when Boros was doing that over here with his with the stopwatch, Timmy Raines actually didn't like it. He never said anything. He's kind of a quiet kid. But he felt, we'll watch him again on this steal, he felt it put too much focus on him, and everybody was watching him, the catchers, and he wanted to kind of surreptitiously go out there and do his job. He didn't think Boros was giving him that opportunity. It's been a rough spot with his Montreal ball club down through the last couple of years. Last year, they could not find a number 2 hitter. They even tried Dawson there for a while.
They had more than a dozen guys bat in the number 2 spot. Christenson spears it. Raines will have to hold, and Cromartie is thrown out.
Well, it's one of the 3 worst things he could have done. Strike out, pop up in the infield, or hit right back to the pitcher. Watch him pull off this ball. He's trying. He's not a natural pull hitter, Cromartie. He takes the pitch that's outside, out of the strike zone. Wasn't very disciplined. Christensen looks him back. Jesus say, go to first. I'll tell you, a good veteran team knows how to make outs. That isn't the way you want to make out in that situation.
Andre Dawson's .384 is a league-leading figure at this stage. He's got a 10-game hitting streak. He's got 12 hits in his last 24 at-bats. It's impressive enough to hit 500 for 6 games. How about Rod Carew? He's approaching 100 at-bats. He's got 48 hits in 96 at-bats. He's batting .500 on May 7th.
He passed Brett like he was standing still, and Brett was hitting about .460 when he went out a few ball games.
Brett came back against Dave Stieb of Toronto last night, got 2 more base hits. Brett's hitting all 17 games in which he's played this year.
Get an argument from the statement from the people here in Montreal, but I think Steve's the best right-handed pitcher in baseball right now. Not Steve Rogers, something. Steve has been just incredible what he's done.
Steve beat Kansas City for the Blue Jays last night. A ball and 2 strikes to Dawson.
Sometimes numbers don't tell the whole story. Dawson's record with men on base, his batting average, has not been exceptional for a player of his caliber. He's the kind of pitcher, and I really mean this, I would pitch from the stretch to him all the time, even with nobody on base.
Why?
Because a pitch, watch his leg kick. With the leg kicks, that's his timing device. When a pitcher goes into his windup, he has a longer delivery, he can time it better. When he pitches from a stretch, it's a shorter delivery, and I really think it upsets his timing. And that's his theory, I'm not saying it's so. But he picks up that left leg, and he keeps it up, timing the pitcher's motion.
Usually when people say a guy's not a good clutch hitter, there's some implication that there's something lacking in his character. You're saying that maybe the fact that his timing is upset when he hits with men on base, that it's mechanical rather than psychological.
Yep, I think so. Plus, another thing, too, is remember the on-base percentage of the minis hitting in front of him is not as high as when you've got some of the Phillies hitting in front of him. They don't walk, so he has less opportunities. And you learn to hit under pressure by hitting under pressure. He hasn't had as many opportunities in this spot for this ball club.
Well, last year he hit .301 with 23 homers, but had a relatively low RBI total, 83 and over 600 at-bats. It's not an embarrassing figure, but it's not an overly impressive one. Al Oliver, talking about guys with a chance for the Hall of Fame. His credentials are there. Hit hard, but DeJesus has it. Low throw, Perez fields it. The runner to third with 2 down. We'll be right back with Oliver's at-bat, but first to New York.
Elsewhere in the major leagues this afternoon, the Tigers and the Angels are tied at 2. Walkenfuss a home run for the Tigers. Braves 1, Astros nothing. Home run number 7 for Bob Horner, and the Blue Jays lead the Royals 6-3, but George Brett has homered his first 2 trips to the plate. Let's go back to Montreal.
Well, we were talking about Brett a minute ago, Tony. Had a 3-homer game a couple of weeks ago against the Tigers. He's got 2 in his first 2 at-bats. I guess the hamstring injury and the short layoff didn't hurt him too much. Oliver cuts on the first one.
A lot of room.
There's enough room here. Schmidt has it. So a leadoff walk and a stolen base by Raines is wasted. He's left stranded at third, 1 complete. In Montreal, the Phillies lead the Expos 2-0.
Don't miss a very special baseball doubleheader. The White Sox and the Yankees, or the Expos battle the world champion Cardinals. Then Seattle's West Coast war with the A's, or the Dodgers and the Padres, only on NBC Sports.
Well, some stadiums have monuments in center field, majestic walls in left, or ivy on the fences. Here they've got that eyesore, that terrible crane out in dead center field. That is not a pretty sight, to be perfectly honest. And let's pause for station identification on the NBC television network.
This is Channel 5, WPTZ, Plattsburgh, North Pole, Burlington.
I don't know if Dutch Rennert's going to have any voice left by the time we play 9 here. Strike 1 called to DeJesus, starting the Phillies second. I wonder if the Phillies regret the deal, which sent Larry Boa, not so much Boa because he's in his mid to late 30s now, but Ryne Sandberg along with him to the Cubs for DeJesus.
Sandberg off to another off start, but he's got a chance to be an outstanding player. Well, this Phillies ball club loses Trio last year. He wanted a big contract, 5 or 6 years guaranteed for big numbers. And one of the reasons they did not want to give him that kind of money is because they've got a kid named Juan Samuel from the Dominican Republic who may be a year, maybe 2 years away. So Joe Morgan's a stopgap move, but he has a chance to be an outstanding player from everything I've seen.
Check swing foul. 2-2 the count to DeJesus. So Trio was one of 5 players the Phillies packaged and sent to Cleveland for the highly regarded young outfielder Vaughn Hayes. But Hayes first injured a leg, now has a sore shoulder. Perez has emerged as one of the league's hottest hitters, and Hayes, for the moment, is a reserve.
Well, Maddox and Matthews were hurt in spring training at times, and Pete Rose said, look, Tony Perez is hot. I'll go to right field. You put him at first base. And it sure has paid off. Good pitch by Gullickson. I would assume that Galen Cisco, the pitching coach, after the rough inning that Gullickson had, throwing 38 pitches, had a little confidence with him, trying to straighten something out mechanically to try and get the ball down low in the strike zone. He did that last pitch.
For Gullickson, his second strikeout of the ball game. Larry Christenson, by reputation, a good hitting pitcher. He's without a hit this season in 7 at-bats. First pitch swinging grounds to Spire for the second out. Two out and nobody aboard, and Pete Rose, who grounded to second to start the ball game. Tony mentioned earlier he's playing in his 646th consecutive game. There are only 2 players in history who have had 2 separate consecutive game streaks of more than 500. This guy and Charlie Gehringer, the great second baseman for the Tigers. Strike 1 call.
Something about Rose that when he puts on a uniform, his body feels like it's still 19. I don't know what it is, but I've never seen such intensity, such enthusiasm, day in and day out. And how many people interviewed him up here today? We talked to him. Canadians are broadcasting. They're doing it in English. Just incredible. Back to Philadelphia. Everybody wants an interview. He gives them all the time.
Took time out to drift over by the stands and sign a few autographs. He's behind on the count 0-2. Ball one.
Some of Charlie Lau's hitting theories have come from watching Pete Rose. Like when Rose takes a pitch, he watches it right into the catcher's glove. Charlie Lau calls head discipline.
A little bloop hung up longer than I thought it would, and Raines has an easy play on it. The Phillies are retired 1-2-3 in the top half of the second after 1.5 in Montreal. The Phillies still lead it 2-0. Wallach, Spire, and Ramos in the Expos second against Larry Christenson. Wallach off to a slow start at 244 with a couple of homers. Last year he hit 28 and drove in 97 runs. Did it pretty quietly. Asked the average fan about some of the big hitters on the Expo Ball Club. It'd probably take a while before they thought of Wallach.
Now, you wouldn't think that he would have driven in more than Andre Dawson, but he did. That's where they'll try and pitch him. He's a pretty good low ball hitter. Billy DeMars, a third base coach and hitting instructor, has worked with him to free up his hands so he can get at the inside pitch and high. Moved his hands a little bit away from his body and raised them a little bit so he could get at that high pitch a little bit better. It doesn't mean that they will go after him consistently up high. Sooner or later, a pitcher has to go back to his strength, which may be low, so you challenge strength and strength.
Held up on it, 3 balls and a strike.
Well, when I come to Sunday, that's not the way it's only made and got headlines like that. I don't know how to newspaper.
In the air to left center field with some pretty good authority at the wall and gone. Number 3, and the Philly lead is cut to 2-1. In this ballpark, Tony, it's sometimes difficult to judge fly balls off the bat, especially because we're so far from home plate. This one fooled me a bit.
And also, there is so much room between the outfield fence and the permanent structure behind it. Wallach is a very important guy to start hitting for this ball club to afford some protection for both Oliver and Dawson. Because while they're hot, well, Oliver is just starting to get out with 3 hits yesterday. While they're hot, pitchers will pitch around him in tough situations to get to Wallach unless he starts hitting.
Strike one is the count to Chris Spire. Spire with just his 16th at-bat of the season after losing the shortstop's job to Brian Little. But playing, as we mentioned earlier, because Doug Flynn is out of the lineup and Little has been shifted to second base.
Chris did a very steady job for this ball club last year. Ozzie Smith is the only one in the National League at shortstops who made fewer errors than he did.
And he drove in 60, which is a good total for a shortstop.
And especially when you find that you're batting 8th sometimes or down in the lineup where they're not going to give you many strikes. You don't have the DH, of course, in this league. There's a lot of breaking balls when you hit number 8 usually. The pitcher's following.
In the air to center field. Maddox very gracefully takes it.
Maddox has a theory, first of all, why he plays so shallow. He obviously has confidence that he can go back, but he told me one thing a couple of years ago that I couldn't believe, but he said it's true. He said, I play shallow because I like to be able to see the catcher's signs. I keep coming in until I can see the signs and see the location of the pitch. It helps me to be a better center fielder and anticipate more. You got a pretty good eyesight to be able to do that, don't you? So I feel more a part of the game when I play shallow.
Catcher Bobby Ramos in place of Gary Carter. 2 balls and no strikes. For Ramos, his 5th at-bat of the year. He's 2 for 4 so far. Carter has led National League catchers in games caught 6 straight years, averaging around 150 a season. But a combination of bronchitis and a sore elbow have him out of the lineup today. He played last night, even though he wasn't feeling well at all. Came up to me before the game and said, just don't ask me to do the lineups tomorrow, because my voice is gone.
Bill Bergen said one of the toughest Verbal battles he had to have this spring was getting Carter in his office and saying, you are not going to catch 150 games this year. And Carter said, why not? He said, you're going to catch maybe 135, 140. We'll pinch hit you. We'll try and find a place in right field for you on occasion. Carter wanted to catch 150 again this year.
I don't know if it was coincidence or the elbow, Tony, but Carter did not look good throwing the ball last night. He had 3 throws way off the mark on attempted steals by the Phillies. I guess you don't have to be told that Dutch Rennert called that one a strike.
It's a pretty tough slider. Very hard slider from Christenson. Just exploded. He's going to it again. Look at that.
Struck him out.
He has an outstanding arm. One thing they will watch very closely. Some pitchers you do not count pitches for. You just say, well, how do you feel? And if he says, I feel well, and I'm throwing the ball well, getting hitters out, you let him in. For Christensen, they talk right around 100 pitches. Not as an absolute, but they think at 100, they know he's going to start faltering.
The strikeout was Christensen's first. Brian Little's the hitter, and Mike Schmidt comes way in. A definite threat to bunt. Slaps it to short. DeJesus gobbles it up and throws him out. It's not a 1-2-3 inning. It began with a homer off the bat of Wallach, and then Spire, Ramos, and Little went down in order. After 2, Phillies 2, Expos 1. Back after these messages from your local stations.
Pro Live Saturday Night Sports, the big story tonight. Stevie Wonder, legend, genius, funny. Check it out. Saturday night is live.
This is one of the biggest of all Expos fans, Donald Sutherland. This is not the kind of celebrity who shows up at a World Series game and makes sure he gets a seat by the TV camera. This is a legitimate fan. I was in St. Louis once. Expos playing a key series with the Cardinals. Sutherland flew into town for the whole series. Had no business there, just wanted to see the ball games.
2 years ago, he was on location in Europe, and during the playoffs, he got a phone line hooked up to listen to the entire ball game. It cost him $7,000. Is that a fan?
I hope the Expos won. Gary Matthews, whose nickname is Sarge on this Philly ball club. Pete Rose hung that tag on him because he thinks Matthews takes charge like a sergeant would. 1-0 pitch. 2 balls and no strikes to him, leading off the Philly third.
He's one of these guys, and if you try and teach a kid, you would say, don't copy Gary Matthews. Watch the bat keep going, and they talk about a hitch and the whole bit. Look at that. Well, he is ready when the ball is in the hitting area, isn't he?
He's a durable player, too, Matthews. Played in 162 games last year. Only 5 players in the National League did that. His teammate Rose was one of them. Hit hard. Wallach throws him out. Wallach is improving as a third baseman. He had a lot of trouble early last year, moved from the outfield, made 23 errors on the season, but most of them came in the first half, and then he got steadier as the year progressed.
Oh, there was so much instability on this infield last year. Wallach coming in at third, Oliver coming in over at first base. 8 different second basemen until Flynn took over, and they got him in a trade. And that's tough. That's really tough for a manager to contend with. And it was Jim Fanning for a while. He really had a lot of problems with it.
Mike Schmidt had a single in the 2-run Philly first, which means that Schmidt is 14 for his last 22. And his average has climbed above 360.
Look at how far he is from the plate. You would think he cannot reach the outside corner, and yet a lot of teams still try and drill the ball inside on him because he dives into the ball so. First, by moving back in the batter's box and away from the plate, it gives a split second longer for a hitter to look at the pitch. You figure you've got about 2/5 of a second to make the big decision. He is so quick.
His second straight base hit, and he just won't cool off. Big turn at first, but he'll hold there as Raines gets it back in.
Here's a guy that at one time was striking out 150, 170 times. You can see the head discipline we talked about. The head down on the ball doesn't go up as the ball goes off the bat. The head is going down, and watch it.
Schmidt now 15 hits in his last 23 at-bats, and even that doesn't tell the full story because he's been walking a lot. So if you extend it to plate appearances, the guy's been on base about 70 to 80% of the time in his last 30 to 35 plate appearances.
Yeah, when Morgan, when he's playing, he's out with a hamstring pull. When he's on, he's getting 20-plus walks already this year, even though his batting average doesn't show it. So Schmidt's coming up with men on, and you can't pitch around him because Perez has been so hot. So they're finding they have to pitch to him. Last year and sometimes the year before, they refused to throw Schmidt strikes. So as long as everybody else stays hot, they're going to have to pitch to somebody.
Yesterday was a good day for the oldsters. Perez will be 41 in a week, game-winning homer in the ninth. Ron Reed, who's 40, got the victory in relief of John Denny. Bert Campaneris, just called up by the Yankees, went 4 for 5 in a Yankee win last night. He's 41 years old. Let's see if there's room here. Oliver, nice play.
All scoops. What an athlete he is. He's a great racquetball player. He's played against some World's Championship class racquetball players. Marty Hogan ends up scoring 13, 14 points off him. He once told him, I think another great racquetball player, Jack Bloomfield, said if you played 1 year of intense competition, you could become a world's champion racquetball player. He's what, 37 years old?
He's a player who actually has improved all around, especially as a hitter, as he moves into his mid-30s. Even the great ones tend to taper off a bit, but he actually, if you were to chart his career, the graph has been upward since the age of 30.
You cannot hold Mike Schmidt too lightly down at first base either. If you allow him to get a walking lead, even though he's coming off that arthroscopic knee surgery, he will go like he did last night. We'll try and make him stop. See how he's trying to just kind of ease off, hold the ball on him for a pitcher.
Grounded to short, spired a little for the force. No runs. A base hit by Schmidt in the inning for the Phillies after 2.5. The Phils lead the Expos 2-1.
Elsewhere in the major leagues in Baltimore, the Orioles, after trailing 4-0 to the A's, have taken the lead on this Ken Singleton RBI. Eddie Murray scores. Earlier, Singleton had a 2-run homer. Orioles 5, A's 4. Top of the 4th. Let's go back to Montreal.
You know, Tony, Ken Singleton had a very bad year at the plate. Elbow problem, especially hurt him batting from the right side in '82, and a slow start this year. On this last week or so for the Orioles, he's really been hot. Started in Seattle, took it down to California, now against the A's, has been swinging a hot bat.
He went on a conditioning program. They found his right arm was so much weaker than his left arm, he had to build it up, and he says he's swinging the bat as well as he was 3 years ago.
Gullickson, who's without a hit in 8 at-bats, starts it in the 3rd for the Expos, who trail at 2-1. This telecast is presented by authority of Major League Baseball and is intended solely for the private, non-commercial use of our audience. Any publication, reproduction, retransmission, or other use of the pictures, descriptions, and accounts of this game without the express written consent of Major League Baseball is, as we all know by now, strictly prohibited. 2 balls and a strike to Bill Gullickson.
Watch Larry Christenson land on his front left foot. Boom. See it buckle with that stiff leg? Many people feel that that is one of the reasons for his elbow problems, so much strain, and also he had some congenital lower back problems. It really takes a lot of jarring.
Count is even to Gullickson leading off the 3rd. Gets his bat on it, pops it up. Perez. 1 out.
When I said he was rooting around the
A little bit of sunshine now, Tony. We'd feared rain. They said there was about a 60 to 70% chance of it. Very overcast at the start of the game, getting brighter as we move along.
So the forecasters were wrong. They said it was a 90% chance of rain. We just got a little sprinkle before the game. Wrong to this point, anyway.
Tim Raines walked and then stole second. His first time up, bluffs a bunt, and it's ball 1.
I think it's interesting, and I love to watch center fielders and defenses move. Now, Maddox is playing Raines a little bit deeper than he did some power hitters over the left center field. One of the reasons probably is so he can cut a ball in the gap, so you can hold him to a single. Look at where Maddox is. He was playing power hitters. Diaz about that shallow or even less. The hole, of course, in right center field. What you're probably going to do is play him away and pitch him away. Run the fastball outside, let him hit fly balls out to the left side.
Well, Christenson, who normally is a good control pitcher, has walked just 1 so far, and that was Raines. Now he's behind 3-0 to Raines, and of all people that you don't want to give a free pass to, this guy is it. but he does.
If there is a change that Bill Burton said he wants to make on this ball club when he came over, as he said, they sit back too much. So they've gotten used to waiting for a big inning, and it never comes. So occasionally it does, but against good pitching it doesn't. He said, we're going to start more runners, we're going to take more chances, be more aggressive on the base path.
Well, the thought persists, Tony, that this Expo club is somehow less than the sum of its parts. Some clubs seem to maximize what they have. This has not been one of those clubs. Perez with a fine play, over to cover Christenson, safe.
So Cromartie doesn't give Raines a chance at all to do his thing. Crow in that spot to try. One run down to let Raines get in scoring position. You can look at it the other way and say Crow is trying to get the ball, again, trying to pull an outside pitch like he did the last time when he hit back to the pitcher, trying to pull the ball in the hole, take advantage of that hole. But I think you've got to give Raines a chance. Nice play by Perez, wasn't it?
He's got to feel like a young colt. Game-winning home run last night. Nice play ranging to his right.
And he got the fast man off the base pass. Lead runner.
So now Cromartie is the runner at first with 2 down, and Dawson is the hitter. He grounded as short his first time. I was kidding him before the game about that mammoth home run he hit a few weeks ago. We were there at the Astrodome, up into the upper deck in left field, a 500-footer. I said, I can still hear the crack of the bat. He says, I tell you, it still scares me.
You know, I saw the Texas Rangers and their new manager last week, Doug Rader. He's one of the other 2 Houston players who did it, along with the toy cannon Jimmy Wynn. He said, he did? Farther than mine, Rader said. I said, yes, he did. He's pulling the ball more this year. He's gone, Cromartie.
And he'll have it stolen easily. Not a wild pitcher pass ball. Since he was running, it simply scored as a stolen base.
That's something that Vern Rapp, the first base coach, is very good at, as is Bill Bird, but they try and watch the catcher, and they pick the pitch to try and steal on. If they see fastball, they might call it off very quickly or alert their first base runner. They see breaking ball, which they got, they'll start it. Cromartie picking up the pitcher as it bounces.
A ball and a strike is the count to Dawson. The Phillies lead the Expos 2-1. We're in the last half of the third. Into right field. Let's see if Rose can handle it. He does.
Playing him perfectly, doesn't he? Right center field.
So Dawson hits it hard to the opposite field, but he's retired, and 3 have been completed in Montreal, with the Phillies leading the Expos 2-1.
Baseball star Jim Palmer.
I hate dandruff.
Can Tegrin control Jim Palmer's dandruff for 3 days without shampooing?
3 days?
Tegrin test, day 1.
Beautiful, so far.
Day 2.
Tegrin's still working. Good thing, it's almost airtime.
Day 3.
Tegrin controlled my dandruff 3 days.
Jim Palmer, looking good.
Try Tegrin. It passed the 3-day test.
Tegrin works day after day after day.
Pete Rose, who's been an all-star at 5 different positions: third base, second base, first base, left field, right field.
Watch his trademark. He did this at first base. Spike it, Petey. Oh, not quite as vigorously. He would get so many teams mad at him when he would do that after an out. World Series time.
Maddox leads it off in the 4th and takes high. Pete told us before the game that he really misses playing first base. Not that he minds. He volunteered to get Perez's hot bat in the lineup, but he felt like he was more in the game at first base. Involved in cutoffs. You could handle almost any ball that's hit. This one fouled away, 1-1.
He misses the social life down there, too. There's nobody to talk to in right field. You can talk to the fans if you're at home, but who's going to talk to him in this ballpark?
He said the outfield is especially tough if you're not hitting, because all you have to do out there is think about what's going wrong at the plate, whereas there's too much to do on the infield to dwell on it. You have to concentrate too much.
Gullickson has settled in after that first rough inning. He threw 38 pitches.
Change-up misses. Rose said, take a look at guys who play the outfield who are not hitting. Watch them between pitches. Very often you'll see them assume batting stances. They'll be shuffling around. It's obvious they're talking to themselves. In the air down the right side, Cromartie toward the line. It's out of play.
You know, it's tougher to play the outfield for a number of reasons than artificial surface because the ball scoots and you can't get the shoestring catch. But another thing is to position yourself defensively. You have no reference points. On dirt and grass, straight away, whatever that is, you wear a little patch out in the grass. An artificial surface, you've got to really watch your foul lines and then the other outfielders and the infield to get a reference point as to how deep or which way you should play. And playing defense on the turf is obviously much more difficult and important, and the positioning is much more strategic.
Here's Spire at short. Rose Maddox out to start the inning. Infield defense. That's one of the keys for the Expos. Can they improve over last year's performance? They yielded 78 unearned runs in 1982, the highest total in the National League. You don't find many contenders who will lead the league in unearned runs allowed.
He had about 40 errors or more at the corners in the infield. Wallach and Oliver.
Strike one to switch hitter Larry Milburn. That little insignia on the side of the uniform celebrates the 100th anniversary of the Philly franchise, which was minted in 1883. Milburn is the second out as we check with 30 Rock in New York.
At Tiger Stadium, watch Glenn Wilson, a former flanker at Sam Houston State in Texas, rob Bob Boone of extra bases. A backhanded catch. Brian Downing scores from third, but Bobby Grich had to hold at second. 4-2 Angels.
Thank you, Bill Mackatee. Back here in Montreal, Bob Costas and Tony Kubek. 2 outs in the top half of the fourth with nobody on base. And Ivan De Jesus, the number 8 hitter, is the batter.
Wallach up tied at third in case he tries to drop a bunt down.
Phillies lead it 2-1. Another chance for Spire. Long throw, got him, and a 1-2-3 frame for Gullickson. Three and a half gone by in Montreal. The Phillies lead the Expos 2-1. Next Sunday on NBC Sports World, it's WBC Junior Lightweight Champion Bobby Chacon and number 1 ranked contender Cornelius Boza Edwards. It's a 12-round non-title bout live from Las Vegas. Chacon upset Bazooka Lamone to claim the title earlier this year, but Boza Edwards beat Chacon in a previous meeting. All the action blow by blow with Marvin Furty next Sunday on NBC Sports World beginning at 4 Eastern Daylight Time. Al Oliver leads it off in the Expo fourth and takes a ball inside and low.
Oliver way off the plate, but not back in the box. He's about even with the plate. He has a theory that he can catch breaking balls better before they break, because he always looks for fastballs. Play him around the left center field. Watch that right leg, how he picks it up.
He's trying to hit 300 for the 8th consecutive year.
He's never had a bad year, has he? Anywhere.
A very articulate guy, Al Oliver, personable fella too, and perhaps misunderstood. For years he's claimed that he's been an underrated player, and some people took that for Oliver blowing his own horn, but actually he was just being honest and just being articulate about it when asked. Coming in as Maddox to take it for the first out.
To show you, he did something last year that I thought was really showed the exceptional kind of person he is. Up here in Canada, Toronto, Montreal play a game they call it the Pearson Cup. In charity. Lester B. Pearson, the former Prime Minister. And last year he spent 2 hours before that ball game in Toronto with Lloyd Mosby, the young left-handed hitter, just talking philosophy of hitting. And I think it's starting to work on Mosby because he's starting to hit the ball a little bit. He got him hitting the ball the opposite way. Didn't have to do it.
Oliver said he was very touched to be named Canada's Baseball Man of the Year for 1982.
Honor has gone to Ferguson Jenkins in past years.
Gary Carter. Wallach homered his first time. A drive over the wall in left center. That's the only hit the Expos have managed off Christenson so far. 2 balls and a strike.
And what an addition that John Denny's been to this staff. You know, he's pitched what? He had 3 complete games going in a row till last night, and he was just outstanding.
Pitched well enough to win last night, but so too did Charlie Lee of the Expos. Both pitchers were undermined a bit by shaky defense, and neither figured in the decision. Popped foul, Diaz off with a mask. Had a little trouble, started to sail back toward fair ground on him, but he takes it for the second out.
And with Schmidt playing very deep at third base, he couldn't help Diaz out. Denny has started on that Steve Carlton routine in the offseason. Derives from what? Taekwondo.
Gus Heffling, the Philly trainer, prescribes the regimen, and part of it is to try and grind your hand down into a big vat of rice. How far can you get it down as you work it and twist it from side to side and improve the strength in the forearms?
You ought to try it. I tried it last year.
It's really helped you,
has it? I could get down about 3 inches, and Carlton would take his hands and go into that thing to about 3 feet down. And of course, Carlton's been a weightlifter since he was 15 years old, lifting heavy weights.
Really helped you with the pencil up here in the booth. I notice you're marking those scorecards with a good deal more authority than you used to. Spire grounds it to short, and DeJesus throws him out. So both Christenson and Gullickson have settled into good grooves. We've completed 4, with the Phillies leading the Expos 2-1, and we'll be back after these messages from your local stations. Doubleheader baseball coverage next week on NBC. It begins with 30 Rock, our pregame show at 1 Eastern Time, followed by the White Sox and the Yankees. Tony and I will be there at Yankee Stadium, or the Expos Cardinals. Then the second half of the doubleheader from the West Coast, San Diego and the Dodgers, or the Mariners and the A's. Doubleheader next Saturday on NBC.
3 big bats for the Yankees haven't been driving in the runs. Winfield, Kemp, and Baylor, they've been leaving a lot stranded.
Well, Winfield and Baylor had back-to-back homers the other night in Kansas City, but aside from that, they have cooled off a bit. Campaneris gave them a jolt. They beat the Twins last night 8-4. Guidry the winner, Gossage a save, and Campaneris goes 4 for 5.
Gullickson has really gotten in the groove. He's retired 11 of the last 12 batters, 6 of those by ground balls, just a single by Schmidt in the third. So they ironed out some problem he had in that first inning. He's had the ball down lower this last few innings. They view tapes, films, everything of pitchers, and when something goes wrong, they can put that video cassette in. One of the ways this game has become more scientific, and see when a guy was going well, where he was stepping, where his release point was, as a pitcher, and then adjust. Pitching coaches and hitting coaches have to have almost photographic memories to be able to do that during the course of a game. It's about one little flaw.
1-2 from Gullickson to Christenson. Respecting the fact that Christenson, by reputation, is a good hitter, Gullickson is throwing him breaking balls.
It's a pretty good hitting pitching staff. He left out there, Carlton.
Yeah, how about Terry Forster? He doesn't get to bat that often because he's a relief pitcher. The guy's a lifetime .420 hitter. And that's not just in 10 or 11 at-bats. He's hit about 65 or 70 times in his career, and he's got about 30 hits.
Pretty good bullpen down there, along with Bahena and McMurtry for Atlanta. See where this ball is.
Garber,
never try to umpire from the center field camera with the angles. Looks like it's outside. Maybe it was, but I wouldn't say definitely so. Rennert is considered one of the best ball and strike umpires in the National League. He called a game, a league championship game for the Phillies a couple of years ago that Bob Boone swore was the best game he'd ever had umpired by a home plate umpire.
Pete Rose at 0 for 2. Ball 1 to him.
Wallach has come way up in at third base.
Last year, Tony, Philly leadoff men hit a composite .237. Now, Rose was the leadoff man part of the time, but not most of the time. Usually he was batting second. An interesting figure. Philly leadoff men scored 82 runs last year. By contrast, the Cardinals, who won the pennant, had 125 runs scored by their leadoff men. Little nubber, which Gullickson fields and throws Rose out.
Rose may have been trying to slap that ball by to third baseman Wallach, who was in. But Gullickson now has gone more to the sinker. You can see by the ground ball outs he's gotten. And Pete topped it.
So somebody, be it Rose or maybe Morgan, although they like to hit Morgan a little lower in the batting order, or maybe sometime in the future Dernier, who seems to have the capabilities but hasn't put it together yet to be an outstanding leadoff man. Somebody's going to have to assume that role for the Phillies because it's been a sore spot the past couple of years.
Last year, the Phillies got off to a very slow start. It was something like 9-13, and then Dernier got hot, and the Phillies went 19-8 in the month of May. Ironically, another center fielder got hot. We've been talking about a lot of other players, Perez and Schmidt, but Maddox has gotten hot in the midst of this streak for the Phillies starting off this season.
For the time being, at least, Dernier has been sent back to the minors, but the Philly people don't think it'll be for long. They'll make some roster moves, juggle a bit, and get him back here.
He was switch hitting in the spring of the year, convinced to do so by Corrales, but they think he went back to Reading. They're not even sure here that he's going to go back to just hitting right-handed. Play this man straight away. Really hit one up the middle, one to the left side. Very, very quick bat. You can wait till the last split second. Get him up on that front toe.
Count is full to Matthews now with 2 outs and nobody aboard. Top half of the 5th inning.
Gary Matthews, the guy who got Ted Turner of the Atlanta Braves fined when he, I guess it was a cocktail party or something, when Ted Turner let it be known that he would love to have Gary Matthews. Commissioner Bowie Kuhn heard about it, considered to be tampering. Fined Turner, and then all of a sudden Turner turned on Matthews and didn't like him at all. Got him up here in Philadelphia.
Payoff pitch. Down the right field side in plenty of trouble if fair, but foul.
He all but took that ball out of Ramos's glove. Just waited till the last to just try and put it in play. I wonder if it's a little difficult to see right now because there is some sun out in center field. Should be a good background. You can see it's black. Maybe just a little bit of that sun behind the pitcher and the glare affecting some of these hitters. I really think those both pitchers have got pretty good stuff right now.
A 2-out walk to Gary Matthews. And that'll give Mike Schmidt a crack at it. Schmidt is 2 for 2, a pair of singles. His batting average has crept up above 360. He has 15 hits in his last 23 at-bats. This guy, Tony, is in the top 6 or 7 all-time in home run frequency. He's hit a home run once every 14.7 times at bat. That puts him in the company of people like Killebrew, Kiner, Mantle, McCovey, Matthews. Of course, the leader is Willie Mays, an astounding figure. He hit one every 11.7 times at bat, and the guy in the number 2 spot is Kiner, 1 for every 14.1. So Ruth was in a league of his own when it came to power stats, but Schmidt is pretty close to the others. 2-0.
There's a kid in the American League, and I don't know what's going to happen to him. He had 50 home runs at Edmonton last year. I'm talking about Ron Kittle, 40 home runs the year before. The Bull, Greg Lazinski, who batted 3-4 spot with Schmidt all those years in Philadelphia, says that Kittle is the same kind of player at this stage of his career as Schmidt was. He may strike out 150, 170 times, but he's going to hit enough home runs, and if he improves like Schmidt, he can be the same kind of hitter. But that's saying an awful lot, and that's just Greg Lazinski's opinion. This guy led the league in strikeouts, for 4 years, one time 180. Wasn't getting many bases on balls. He's cut down his strikeouts last year to 130, getting more walks, a little more discipline.
That youngster Kittle's among the American League leaders in RBIs right now. He's hitting the long ball for him.
3-0 slider. That'll show you the respect for Schmidt. 3-0, and he threw it outside. When a guy's this hot, you're maybe better off pitching around than putting him on. There was a report on Brett before he got injured. The super scouts were saying, look, just keep the ball away, because anything he hits, he's turning on for an extra base hit. So if you walk him, even with 2 men on.
On the other hand, you walk him, you face Perez, who's batting about .350 himself.
Going on 3-1.
Foul backing out of play. Find that surprising?
Well, I don't know. Schmidt is standing up there like he may have thought it was surprising. Sometimes hitters don't like it. I know Joe Morgan never did with Cincinnati. He didn't want anybody running off first base. He told Sparky Anderson that because it distracted him. I don't know if that's what happened to Schmidt. But again, it may have been either a cut fastball or a slider that he threw to Schmidt.
Is it possible that Matthews forgot the count and thought it was full?
He may have gone on his own. Oliver was playing behind him and is now again.
Well, he will be running now.
You know what they're going to say is, before this count, is give him the base and we'll walk Schmidt anyway. Good fastball.
So Gullickson was behind 3-0, comes back to fan Schmidt. No runs, a walk, a man is left. 4.5 gone by. Phillies still lead the Expos 2-1.
In Detroit, the Tigers have narrowed the gap against the California Angels. Here, Chet Lemon hits an opposite field home run off of Jeff Zahn, and now the Tigers trail the Angels 4-3. That game is now in the bottom of the 5th. Let's go back to Montreal.
And we go to the bottom of the 5th here with Ramos, Little, and Gullickson due for the Expos.
In the 5th, Matthews walked. Around that walk, Bill Gullickson struck out the side. Christenson, Rose, and Schmidt on that 3-2 fastball.
Christensen's first pitch to Ramos, fouled away. Funny thing about Christensen, last year his record was 9-10, but the Phillies won 22 and lost 11 in games that he started. He had a good earned run average and just came out as a tough luck pitcher in some decisions, or wasn't involved in the decision, but kept them close enough so that ultimately they won it.
Phillies bullpen seems to be considerably stronger this year. Al Holland came over from the Giants, although he had some arm problems early. He's a big strikeout pitcher, can throw very hard.
Both shortstops have been busy today. De Jesus throws Ramos out.
I've got about 7-8 chances for shortstops today, says. That was a very quick count. You may come up with something different, Bob. Schmidt weighing again, as is Perez. For Little. He not only can bunt, but he can slap the ball by him.
Tries to drag one, but Christensen makes the good play and throws him out. Little had 111 base hits last year in the minor leagues at Wichita, and 24 of them were bunts. So they've got him pretty well scouted. They know that he's going to try and lay one down if you give him any opportunity at all.
You know, he came up, he got a little bit of a bad break. They were playing for the bunt, but he was just trying to get Perez to go off the bag and have him feel the ball, and he felt he could beat Christensen to the bag. This ball may have hit the seam between the dirt and the grass and deadened it. Let's see where it hits. It just hit a clump of dirt and bounced straight up. It didn't really stay down. If he gets the ball by Christensen and Perez has to feel it, he beats Christensen to the bag.
He will find, with a number of artificial surface fields in the National League, including his home park, that 24 bunt hits will be a lot harder to come by in the major leagues than in the minors.
On the other hand, with them playing tight for him at the corners, there will be enough balls he will hit that will get by the third and first baseman because of the turf and because they're creeping in. So it'll probably balance out.
2 balls and a strike to count to Gullickson. You know, Tony, we've talked about the designated hitter rule and about expansion and some other changes in baseball, and we each find them objectionable to one extent or another. This one fouled back, and Diaz does not have enough room. But of all the changes in the game, a game which admittedly remains relatively unchanged when you look at its lengthy history, but of all the recent changes, the worst is artificial surface, without any question.
Well, I've often wondered if they put an asterisk, Ford Frick, behind Maris's 61 home runs. Why don't they put some asterisks behind those who get a lot of base hits? They wouldn't have gotten an artificial surface, but you can't quantify it. How many more hits on artificial surface depends what kind of hitter you are. How much does it hurt an ERA of a pitcher?
Well, not only does it change the game, but cosmetically it's awful. Compare a natural surface field with real dirt and a real ballpark to some place that looks like you're playing baseball in outer space with a crazy carpet of all different colors, faded. Gullickson strikes out.
I mean,
come on.
Speak your mind.
Big boy. I'm speaking it. 5 from the lead. 2-1 Phillies.
Elsewhere in the major leagues in Detroit, the Tigers have tied things up against the California Angels. John Walkenfuss who homered earlier, drops in this lazy fly ball to score Lance Parrish. It is now 4-4. The Angels and Tigers are tied in the bottom of the 5th.
Interesting assignments this year for these two guys, for Pat Corrales to nurse a veteran roster through 162 games, and for Bill Verdon to try and do what the critics said Jim Fanning couldn't do, get the most out of one of the most talented rosters in baseball.
Well, over the last 4 years, the Montreal Expos have had the best overall record in all of baseball. They've had trouble getting over the hump, some Septembers and some league championship series. But I would think with the talent, it is an enigma to Bill Verdon as it was to Fanning and Dick Williams before him.
Perez has walked and fouled out. Lanny Harris says yes, it's a strike, as Dutch Rennert checked with him.
I should correct myself. Back in the 5th inning, I was talking about striking out the side. Rose grounded out, Schmidt struck out, and Christenson struck out. On the walk to Matthews.
That's close enough. We were talking about the artificial surface at the end of the last inning. One thing you do have to say, trying to be fair, is that to play on artificial surface, where speed is so important, it affects the game in one sense in a positive way, in that it makes it a more aggressive game.
No question.
Trying to take the extra base.
There's stats to prove that the stolen base ratios are more successful on the turf because you can run faster and you get more quick, more bang-bang plays. Throws bounce truer from the outfield to bases.
Still, it's my feeling that even if you play on natural surface, speed is still going to be a very important element. It's still going to be a plus, maybe not to the distorted extent it is on artificial surface, but to a large extent. It's a called third strike on Tony Perez, and for Gullickson, his 5th strikeout.
Gullickson and Christenson have really gotten in the groove. There's been just one fly ball to the outfield off Gullickson. That was by Rose back in the 2nd. Gotten about 8 ground balls. It's that cut fastball again that some pitching coaches do not believe should be taught the young pitchers. They think it hurts their arm. Galen Cisco of Montreal says, not so if you teach it right. We don't want any arm twisting or anything. Hurt the elbow.
Slow roll to third. Wallach, with the help of a good scoop by Oliver, retires Diaz.
You check your swing, you're not going to get a very good jump out of the box. Wallach playing well off the line and deep, has plenty of time. You know, Galen Cisco teaches that cut fastball, and right-handed, that means the ball will run in on the fists of a left-handed hitter or away from a right-handed hitter. He doesn't hold the ball off center, doesn't exert any additional finger pressure. He said just the natural length of your middle finger. If you grip the ball and throw it like a fastball, it'll make a cut fastball. If you hold the seams right and use the seams for the rotation.
Nub down toward first base. Oliver with Gullickson covering, gets it to him. It's another 1-2-3 inning. We've gone through 5.5. This game moving right along now. And the Phillies, on the strength of 2 in the first, still have the 2-1 lead. Tomorrow on Sports World, NASCAR racing, the Alabama Talladega 500 from Talladega in the heart of Dixie, plus the ancient Japanese sport of sumo wrestling on display at the Japan Sumo Wrestling Grand Tournament from Tokyo. Join us for NBC Sports World tomorrow at 4 Eastern Daylight Time. Raines, who's walked twice and has a stolen base today, takes a strike. I covered that sumo wrestling tournament in Japan a while back. We'll present it tomorrow on Sports World. Take a quick look at those guys. That'll push you away from the table before that second piece of pie in a hurry.
Christenson is now retired 7 in a row. Let's make it 8 for Marty. It's fielder's choice. We're going to count it that way. Well, we're getting to the point now with Christenson where they're going to have to start. They're going to have to start watching Christenson for the numbers of pitches he has thrown.
We had him at 66 coming into this inning, Tony.
Look where De Jesus is playing. Well over in the hole toward third base from Mike Schmidt. Outfield, Maddox in left center.
Two balls and 2 strikes. Raines leading off in the last half of the 6th, and the count full to him.
For some reason, he's having trouble throwing strikes to Raines.
And he hasn't walked anybody else, but he's walked Raines twice. Lines it up the middle for a base hit. So Raines has been aboard all 3 times.
Now let's see if Cromartie gives him a chance. In the first inning, Raines walked. He stole second, got as far as third. Third, he walked, and Cromartie swung at the first pitch, ground out. He forced Raines. Also the possibility right here of the bunt situation. You've got a bunt situation hitting around. I'm going to guess that he's swinging. Or he's going to take to let Raines get in scoring position on his own by a steal.
Raines with a good lead at first. Bluffs the go. Strike one call on the inside corner. How quick would you say Christenson's move, not to first, but to the plate is, Tony?
That's the difference. He is quick to first base. Look at that fastball tailing back, and a little bit of help from his catcher Diaz, who just caressed that ball to the inside corner. He's quick to first, but that knee kick makes him slow to home plate.
Casual toss over. We talked earlier about Steve Boros and his calculations with a stopwatch. He figured Gary Carter was the quickest catcher in the National League at releasing the ball, getting it down to second, 1.8 seconds. And Jim Cott, with that almost no windup delivery out of the stretch, at 1.1 seconds. He was the quickest to the plate among pitchers.
What Raines will be trying to do now is read the moves. Any quick move by Christenson will be either move to first base or a pitch out, and he will not go. Anything a little bit slower, he's going.
Cromartie slaps it through. Raines rounds second. Ball juggled. Here he goes. Runners at first and third.
So with Raines going, Crow slaps it by. For the first time in this ballgame, on an outside pitch, he did not try to pull the ball. He had pitches just like that, tried to pull it. Raines picks up the ball so he doesn't get decoyed. One of the few turfs, artificial turfs in baseball, where you get a bad hop. Matthews tried to block it. The ball might have been seen bounced up at him in the chest. When he groped around to the ground for it, Raines, with tremendous acceleration, took off. Very, very alert base running by Raines, and a good piece of hitting by Cromartie, going the opposite way for the first time in this ballgame.
Raines had decided to stay at second, and the ball wasn't booted very far, but that was all the daylight he needed. He took off again, makes it to third, so it's a single and an error. Runners at the corners with nobody out. The batter is Dawson, who's 0 for 2. He's grounded out and lined to Rose in deep right.
And quickly, Pat Corrales gets his bullpen going.
1-0 pitch. Into center field. Maddox has it. Raines tags. They don't even throw to the plate. Raines scores. Game tied. Sacrifice fly for Dawson.
So Costas hit the ball fairly well all 3 times. Ground out to short, line out to Rose, and now he just gets under one to short right center field. Out comes Pat Corrales, possibly to find out the condition of the leg. He had a slightly pulled hamstring, the lower back, and his arm. Got to go through the whole body. With men down in the bullpen, Sid Manji on your left, the left-hander, and Porfi Altamirano. Call him Porfi. Look at that delivery. You can scare some right-handers off the plate. Altamirano.
Coming into this inning, Christenson had yielded just 1 hit. That was the homer by Wallach to lead off the second. Back-to-back singles by Raines and Cromartie with an error mixed in by left fielder Matthews. Then the sacrifice fly, tying the game at 2. Oliver 0 for 2.
You know, Oliver is usually one of the few left-handed hitters who does not give in to trying to pull the ball through that hole. He still stays off the plate and hits the ball pretty much straight away. We saw Cromartie do it twice in this ballgame and ground weakly to the right side. Well, once the pitcher, once the first baseman.
This ball lofted into center field. Another easy play from Maddox. 2 down. Cromartie played it halfway, returns to first. Phillies with 2 in the top half of the first. The Expos with single runs in the second on this guy's home run. And then another one here in the 6th to tie it at 2.
2 Philly RBIs by Diaz.
All 1 low. Wallach is one who has learned from Billy DeMars. DeMars spends a lot of time in the cage with him, getting him to work on his stride.
Off the batting tee. He's a big believer in the batting tee. Now the outfield has moved back a little bit with that lead run on first base. They're going to try and cut the gaps so we can't score on a long single or an extra base hit. Little things that sometimes to an average fan go unnoticed in the ball game. But even Maddox is playing much more deeply now in center field. Rose near the warning track and right. Matthews has moved back also. Look at the defensive alignment. Prevent the double.
Outside for ball 2. Wallach getting a sign from Billy DeMars in the third base coaching box. Vern Rapp is the Expo coach at first. Might be another chance for Maddox. No. Drifting back from the shortstop position to Jesus to take it. But the Expos get the game-tying run on a couple of hits, an error, and a sacrifice fly. And at the end of 6, we're tied at 2. We're coming back after these messages from your local signals. Bottom of the order for the Phillies in the top of the 7th, Milburn, DeJesus, and Christenson. The run off Christenson in the last inning as Milburn lays down a good bunt. What a dandy. It may have hit him, though, as he came out of the box.
Play call by the first base umpire. Dutch Renner was blocked out. He followed the play, and he waited for the call from the first base umpire, Lanny Harris. Milburn could not avoid the little bouncing ball. We'll give you a look at it again. They are playing in looking for a bunt. Gullickson starts moving over. Now we'll see him trying to avoid the ball, running inside the line. And right about there, it goes off his right foot. It caught him back in about his second stride off the right foot.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, Christenson, as the player closest to the play, would get the putout. Or rather, Gullickson, I meant to say. The Expo pitcher.
It'll be an official scorer's judgment. They might say that Ramos following the play-up was closer, but he will make a judgment.
But it is based on who was closest to the ball. DeJesus takes a strike 1-1. Watch the bunt by Milburn again.
Show you a little different angle. See if you can watch the ball.
And it is, in fact, Gullickson who is credited with the putout on the play. The run, by the way, against Christenson in the last inning, the Expo run which tied the score, is unearned as a result of the error in left field by Gary Matthews.
See, Gullickson now has retired, 18 of the last 20. Just a walk to Matthews and a single by Schmidt. Way back to Maddox that goes in the first inning. After Diaz, single for 2 RBIs.
Crowd is announced at just over 25,000 on an overcast day at Olympic Stadium in Montreal. At second base, Little has it for the second out. Soft line drive.
He just knocked DeJesus' bat almost out of his hands, didn't he? With those 3 different kinds of fastball, that cut fastball, one that runs in, and then he sinks one. Makes it tough. And then he can change speeds on that. There's that forkball, which we haven't seen too much of. First inning, he threw one. He's gone more to being just a power pitcher, mostly fastballs. He's laid off that changeup off his slider.
Gullickson was the second pick in the 1977 June free agent draft of amateur players. Harold Baines was the first man taken by the White Sox. So while it's usually more difficult to accurately assess young baseball talent because you don't have a collegiate experience in most cases as you do in football and basketball, that was one year where the first 2 picks were right on the money, Gullickson and Baines.
I think Paul Molitor was in that draft, too. In fact, the story on that was Bill Veeck was criticized in Chicago for not taking Molitor off the Minnesota campus. He took Baines only because he saw Baines in the Little League game hit a ball 400 feet in the Maryland area. Baines do? He just drove in 100-plus runs last year.
Pete Rose, who's worn a collar in this series at 0 for 7, waits on deck. 2-2 pitch. Full count.
So they have scored the putout. They figure the closest man was the catcher, Ramos.
The initial announcement was Gullickson. Now they changed it back. So Gullickson, who's allowed just 1 hit since the first inning, records his 6th strikeout of the game. And after 6.5, we're tied at 2 as we prepare for another edition of the 7th inning stretch.
Old Spice presents the 7th inning stretch, brought to you by Old Spice antiperspirant and original Old Spice deodorant. They both work overtime.
A sidewinding right-hander with a snarling fastball and hissing curve, Jim Bunning was Rookie of the Year for the 1955 Detroit Tigers. Bunning was Detroit's ace for 9 seasons, leading the league in strikeouts twice and hurling a no-hitter against the Bo Sox in 1958. When Bunning was dealt to the Phillies in 1964, he delighted in the senior circuit's low-down strike zone. Bunning variously paced the National League in strikeouts, shutouts, and innings pitched. He finished 4th in lifetime strikeouts and is the only pitcher to win an all-star game for each league. But the jewel of Bunning's 17-year career was a Father's Day present to himself in 1964 when Jim crafted a perfect game against the Mets. Jim Bunning, he never threw a pitch that didn't wiggle or snap.
You remember facing Jim Bunning, don't you, Tony?
Casey Stengel used to love to stack his lineup against Jim Bunning with left-handed hitters. John Blanchard and Yogi Berra would absolutely kill Jim. He may be the next governor of what? Kentucky? He's in politics now.
Player
For a while
agent.
there, he was trying to take Marvin Miller's place. Now they'll be watching Christenson very, very closely as he's getting closer to that 100-pitch mark. Probably around 80, 85 now.
The name Johnny Blanchard brought back some pleasant memories growing up watching baseball in New York. What a pinch hitter and part-time player he was for the Yankees. And then when they traded him to Kansas City in '65, and I guess he was kind of fading a little bit, they traded him to Kansas City, and he sat in the clubhouse and cried. Spire, Ramos, and Little here in the last of the 7th. Sat there crying, and Mickey Mantle came up to console him and said, "John, you were just a reserve with us. At Kansas City, you'll get a chance to play." And Blanchard said, "That's the trouble, Mickey. You know I can't play."
Yeah, he could. He had 4 consecutive home runs in Fenway Park. 2 pinch hitting and 2 starting a ball game. The DH was made for John.
Spire checks his swing and fouls it off, 1-1. The bottoms of both these batting orders are exceptionally weak, and we may be getting near the stage where we'll see some pinch hitters.
It'll be interesting to see if Morgan, with that slight hamstring pull, if needed, can pinch hit, at least draw base on balls, which he has done so well this season.
Carter is on the Expo bench, and both clubs have good professional pinch hitters. Greg Gross, Jim Wolford, people like that.
Bobby Molinaro doesn't do bad for the Phillies.
Hit hard by Spire and by DeJesus.
In that series of pitches, Bobby, he threw 2 hanging breaking balls at them, and he got tattooed on the 4th pitch. So let's see now how quickly Pat Corrales doesn't get his bullpen going. They were up all of the last inning. DeJesus anticipating to his right when he saw the breaking ball sign, but he still couldn't get up high enough. Now, going to see if the bunt is in order with Ramos up. Schmidt is looking for it. How many times has Ramos been called up to bunt? Sometimes it looks like the ideal situation to do it, but if a guy can't bunt, the manager could be strapped. Got to be bunt.
Misses it for the first strike.
You get yourself in a hole if you get somebody up there who just hasn't seen much action, especially with Christenson, who's got that pretty good fastball, still got it, up in the strike zone, a tough pitch to bunt. You pop it up or bunt through it as Ramos just did. Now they may put a switch on.
Brian Little, who is an excellent bunter, is the on-deck hitter. Probably the man they'd prefer in this spot, trying to get the sacrifice down. Ball 1.
Interesting pitch to a breaking ball. There's Billy DeMars flashing a series of signs. Aspire at first and Ramos the hitter. DeMars, a former Phillies third base coach, batting instructor. The last pitch was a breaking ball, which is a pitch you would normally think is easier to bunt. It has a downward action. You can get on top of it more. Philly's still looking for the bunt, Bob. Means you would leave the man in scoring position. He's hitting.
No, he's not hitting that way. 1-2.
You find yourself strapped. If Ramos gets him over, there's DeMars again. If he had bunted, advance the runner, they may have pinch hit for little. You don't know. And you may lose a bat with the Carters. So they walk him. So Manners have to think ahead in those situations.
I doubt that he'd be bunting now with 2 strikes. If he hits it on the ground, he's the kind of guy without much speed that you can double. Takes it inside, 2-2.
2 men up in the Phillies bullpen as DeMars flashes another series of signs. Well, you start him on 2-2. Burton says he's going to be more aggressive this year. Ramos, of course, not having played much, could be a strikeout and then a throwout candidate. You going? Yep. Nope.
Bluffs the go. Called third strike on Ramos, the second time that he's fanned today. And he hears about it from the Expo fans. For Christenson, that's his 3rd strikeout. Now, one thing that is important here, looking ahead, when we speculated about whether Spire would be going, is to at least get through the pitcher's spot in this inning. Not have Little hit into a double play or have a guy thrown out stealing, because even if you don't score, then you'll have Raines, the man you want, leading off the 8th. And the order has worked out so that Raines has been the leadoff man in an inning every time he's hit today, all 3 times, and he's reached base all 3 times. Two runs, 4 hits, and an error, and a costly one it was for the Phillies. It allowed an unearned run in the 6th as Matthews juggled a ball in left field. 2 runs, 4 hits, no errors for the Expos. Runner is going. Fouled away.
So it's tough. It's going to be tough for Little to hit. You know, with that third baseman, first baseman, as you indicated the last time, creeping so close, and the outfielders playing so shallow. Matthews in left. Maddox in center. Swing over toward the left field foul line. So not many of those line drives are going to fall in for him. He could learn to pull the ball just a little bit and take advantage of that right side. Make himself a little bit better hitter.
That misses outside, 2-1. Or even develop the strength to drive the ball. Not necessarily to hit it so far, but to hit the ball hard so that those liners will get into the gaps and force those outfielders to play a bit deeper.
Rally ran him on 1 ball, no strikes. Another good pitch, 2-1. You think he might be going again. See what Burton decides.
Spire's leads have not been as bold as those favored by Raines, for example.
He's not taking a base stealer's lead. He's just making sure he pitches with the hit and run on. Not going.
Fouls it away to the left side. 2 balls, 2 strikes, 1 out and a man on. We're in the bottom half of the 7th and tied at 2. Another good pitching matchup in this series. Last night, Lee and Denny, and today, Gullickson and Christenson. Oddly enough, what would be the premier pairing has been bypassed in this 3-game set. Neither Carlton nor Rogers will pitch. Tomorrow, it'll be Ruthven against Sanderson.
The lefty was initially penciled in, but it would have been the 3rd time this year he'd be pitching with only 3 days rest. In his last 2 outings, he's thrown a lot of pitches. 150 or just over that, 2 consecutive ball games. So even he needs some rest.
2-2 pitch. Struck him out. It was held by Diaz, and he fanned him. 4th strikeout for Christenson.
Christenson has terrific confidence in his slider. And watch how hard he throws it and how much it breaks. This pitch comes close to hitting Ryan Little. It just drops off the table, not only moving laterally, but up and down also. Good scoop by Diaz, keeping the ball from hitting the ground. He reached out and got it.
Gullickson bats for himself with 2 out and a man at first. And you mentioned lefty Carlton. With Nolan Ryan on the disabled list now, Carlton soon will not only pass Walter Johnson's total, which for about 50 years was the record, but it's entirely possible he'll scoot right past Nolan Ryan in a month or so on the all-time strikeout list. Good breaking ball for a strike. Talk about pitching pairings. They had an interesting one last night at Shea Stadium in New York. Soto for the Reds and a resurgent Tom Seaver for the Mets. Seaver pitched well again, as did Soto. Neither was involved in the decision. The Mets won in extra innings. Weak swing and a miss, 1-2.
The major league debut of young Darryl Strawberry, who many people have already hung the tag on. Superstar, unlimited potential. What a tough pitcher to face, did he? Now, Corrales, for some reason, is coming out, wants to talk to Dutch Rennert. Not sure what, but they're going to have a conference right now. He may be wanting to request to see if this is a trip out or not, to see if something is wrong with Christenson. I didn't see any reflex action where he might have hurt his leg or his elbow or anything. Corrales went to Dutch Rennert first to see, hey, is it a trip or isn't it? That's what you're talking about. 100 pitches. We told you early in the ball game, talking to Claude Osteen, when he gets to 100, they really start watching him closely.
Well, the next one he throws will be number 100.
Hey, after the way he wiped out Ramos and Little, it didn't look like he's losing anything, did it?
You mentioned Darryl Strawberry, those who might be following the progress of that young man. Some say destined for superstardom. His big league debut, he went 0 for 4, but he did steal a base. 3 strikeouts in the inning for Christenson. He had struck out only 2 prior to this inning, but he sets down Ramos, Little, and Gullickson after a leadoff single by Spires. 7 complete. Tied at 2 in Montreal.
Pete Rose will lead off the 8th for the Phillies. He's had an 0 for 3 day. Rose in his 21st Major League season. We asked Pete Rose the question he's been asked often this year, Bob. Will the age affect this Phillies ball club?
Well, Tony, I think if you play this game of baseball the way you're supposed to play, I don't care if you're 20 years old, 30 years old, or 40 years old, when September comes, you're going to be tired. And hopefully, we will be right in the middle of a division race, and you don't really have time to think about the fatigue factor.
Well, being tired and young and tired and old are 2 different things. I think tired young players can produce and reach back a little bit more in September. A little reserve. I don't know if old-timers have it, but we'll find out in September.
Rose's 271 mark last year was his lowest since he hit 269 in his second big league season, 1964.
They are right on the lines at 3rd and 1st. Wallach and Oliver are about a foot away to stop the double.
And this guy has hit some doubles in his career, more than 700 of them. He's 4th on the all-time doubles list. Tris Speaker with just shy of 800. His top, Stan Musial 2nd, then Ty Cobb. Rose can probably pass Cobb this year if he has his usual doubles output.
Rose has always been an outstanding fastball hitter, and of course he'll guess in situations too. But the right-hander is Dick Groppenthal, left-hander who's pitched very well in middle relief over here for Bill Burden, Randy Lurch. But some good fastball pitchers can throw the ball by Rose now.
Swings on the 3-1, and it's a tough chance for Raines, but he runs it down on the track.
It was a tough chance for Shallow as he was playing, Pete. He had to run a long way. That's the one thing I think that surprised Bill Burden about the defensive range. He said, I don't think he was going to be this good. Saw him making catch about 2 weeks ago left center field. Playing very shallow for Rose. He goes back on the warning track.
Rose is now hitless, Tony, in his last 11 at-bats, and the Ty Cobb record remains 300 hits away.
He knew just where he was, didn't he? In his home park, it's so much easier. You hit that warning track, you know how many more strides you've got to go.
Matthews is 1 for 2 with a walk today. One-0 pitch. Foul back 1-1. Gullickson off to a 2-3 start this year with an ERA of 4.41, but what a groove he's been in since the first inning today. Changed up on him. Little nubber. Tough play for Ramos. Gets him. So Ramos looked good, pouncing out on top of that one, Tony.
There are many who use this as an indicator, among other things, of how good a catcher is. And, of course, there are very few better than Bench or Carter or Yogi Berra at popping out of the bunt or a top ball. And with a guy like Gullickson, with that follow-through toward first base, it's important to have a guy who can go out and get it that way.
Mike Schmidt singled twice and struck out. Got 7 homers for the year. Hit perhaps the single biggest homer of his career. A pennant-clinching blast a couple of years ago, 1980, late season. Final weekend of the year up here in Montreal.
Remind all you fans, we know it's Derby Day down at Churchill Downs, Kentucky, but there's plenty of time before the start of that race, so we hope you'll stay with us in this 2-2 ball game. Christenson against Gullickson. It's turned out to be a beauty. A little bit slow starting off, and Gullickson struggled, but both pitchers have really taken charge.
Hey, even if we go extra innings, only takes 2 minutes to run the Derby. Take a look at those 2 minutes and just hope nobody hits a game-winning homer here, then come right on back. 1-1 pitch. In the air to left field, but he got under it. Raines comes in and takes it. It's a 1-2-3 inning for Gullickson in the 8th. It'll be the top of the order for Montreal with Raines, Cromartie, and Dawson when we come back after this.
19 million Americans will play amateur baseball this year, from sandlots to colleges. Each will enjoy an experience shared by generations of Americans. To honor these 19 million amateur players, their parents and coaches, and the organizers of amateur baseball, the United States Congress has dedicated May as National Amateur Baseball Month. Professional baseball joins in this salute and urges all of you to support amateur baseball.
The preceding message was furnished by Major League Baseball.
Elsewhere in the majors this afternoon in Detroit, the Tigers have taken a 5-4 lead over the Angels. Luis Sanchez, the Angels pitcher, gives up this single to Glenn Wilson, scoring Larry Herndon. So now the Tigers are on top of the Angels, 5-4, bottom of 7.
And here we're in the last half of the 8th. Top of the order, Raines to lead it off, and he takes a strike. He's walked twice, has a stolen base, and also has a single in the 6th inning. And he scored the tying run. He singled. Cromartie followed with a hit. Raines went to third when Matthews juggled the ball, scored on a sacrifice fly by Dawson.
And like Montreal over the last 2 innings, Schmidt and Perez at third and first, right on the line, and they're also in tight in case Raines tries to drop a bunt down.
How good a bunter is Raines, Tony?
Probably not as good as he should be, but he's still relatively young. He was never asked to bunt that much in the minor leagues. He's driving the ball pretty well. Billy DeMars has worked with him on that also. And as you mentioned earlier, it's awfully tough to get a ball down on artificial surface because the ball gets to the infielders much more quickly.
Fouls the 1-1 pitch down the left side to Jesus, racing over with Schmidt. Not enough room. You have to give credit, Tony, picking up on what we were talking about before, to the clubs that wisely tailor their teams and their strategy to take advantage of their surroundings. You've got to credit a Whitey Herzog, first in Kansas City, last year with the world champion Cardinals, for taking advantage of an AstroTurf field. And it does present some interesting strategy, but what it takes away from the classic skills of the game, the distorted premium it places on some skills and the way it reduces others, and what it looks like compared to a real ballpark, just is not worth it to me. The negatives just outweigh the pluses.
2 more pitchers up once again for Pat Corrales in the bullpen. So that is Sid Manji. He was up earlier, the left-hander, and Altamirano, Porfirio, the right-hander. So as soon as he got near that 100 mark, he started watching it. He better hurry to first base, Christenson.
Well, Perez takes it himself on the slow roller and beats Raines.
He had to, because I don't know if Christenson would have gotten there in time. Raines would have outrun him. I'll tell you, you can't beat experience. Tony looks up, out of the corner of his eye, sees Larry Christenson, decides to take it himself, but it was still a bang-bang play at first. You know, the turf does make the game a little bit quicker, there's no doubt about it, and the added plus, of course, is you rarely get games rained out. You get the Zamboni out and suck up the water.
There's no way they could have played Game 6 of the World Series last year in St. Louis had that been a natural surface field with all the rain. Breaking ball for a strike to Cromartie.
Dutch Rennert's voice has not weakened behind home plate.
They say you can't have a big ego and be an umpire, but a guy like Rennert has managed to accommodate his needs for attention. You're not going to overlook him when you come to the ballpark.
If he's tired, Christensen, he is still overpowering. That last pitch just turned Cromartie in knots. Just blew it right by him.
He's ahead of Cromartie 1-2.
You see the adding and subtracting method. There was a changeup.
He just serves it out there.
Christensen shook him off. Some of the signs that Pat Corrales incorporates with his catchers is he'll give the number sign, and then the number of wipe-offs could be subtractions or additions to the sign. You saw Christensen, by not shaking his head, wiping twice. So either added or subtracted and changed the sign and resulted in a base hit. Change up, he just tried to almost look like a screwball. And out comes Pat Corrales after that base hit. I'll tell you, it doesn't look like Christensen wants to go out of the ball game. He's just staring Corrales down. Before Larry Christensen had a chance to talk Corrales out of it, he made the sign to the bullpen before he crossed the foul line.
Well, Christensen's probably saying to himself, look, I finished up the 7th by fanning 3 guys in a row. Raines opens this inning with a weak bouncer, and Cromartie gets a hit on a good pitch that he had to reach for. He just flipped it out there. Nobody's hit me hard. He has thrown 109 pitches, and as you noted earlier, usually, Tony, they limit him to 100. So a new pitcher coming in, and we're coming back in a minute.
Don't miss a very special baseball doubleheader. The White Sox and the Yankees, or the Expos battle the world champion Cardinals. Then Seattle's West Coast war with the A's, or the Dodgers and the Padres, only on NBC Sports.
Porfi Altamirano from Nicaragua in relief. See his stats, not a save. Nice ERA. Throws strikes from a very unusual spot. Down there.
Jam Dawson, who rolls it to short. The Jesus underhand flip got him for the second out, but Cromartie advances into scoring position.
De Jesus with 2 hands. He, of course, was playing fairly deep for Dawson, even though it was a double play situation. Altamirano runs that fastball right under the fence of Dawson. It's interesting when you hark back to what Dawson said in our little pregame opening. He said, sometimes we're overly aggressive, sometimes we're not, sometimes we get a little too over-anxious, and I believe he did right there, went after a bad pitch in on his fist.
They're going to put Al Oliver on and take their chances with Tim Wallach, even though Wallach homered earlier in this game. Oliver's the guy who his Expo teammates have taken to calling Mr. Hall because of all the talking he does about his chances for making it to Cooperstown. And we were talking before the game with Pete Rose, Tony, about all the either certain future Hall of Famers or possible future Hall of Famers in the ballpark. Youngsters like Tim Raines, relative youngster like Gary Carter, Andre Dawson. They have a chance to become Hall of Fame players. Oliver and Perez will certainly draw Hall of Fame support and quite possibly will make it. Morgan should make it. Schmidt is probably on his way to a Hall of Fame career. Carlton and Rose are definites. Another guy in the ballpark just to our right in the broadcast booth for the Expos, Duke Snider in the Hall of Fame.
Richie Ashburn here broadcasting for the Phillies had some pretty good credentials. I guess the Veterans Committee someday will have to consider putting him in.
After homering in the 2nd, Wallach has popped out twice. Altamirano's going to get out of it. De Jesus flips it over to Milburn covering for the force. No runs, a hit, an intentional walk, 2 or less. We'll go to the 9th, tied at 2.
Tony Perez leading it off against Gullickson. He spent his time playing winter ball. Did not get many at-bats last year as a DH up in Boston. We asked him about the age and why he's so red hot.
I went this winter. I went to play winter ball, and I played first base, and I got a good winter. And then when I came to spring training, I got my stroke down, and I've been hitting the ball well since.
You know, Bob, there's always you can picture something in this game, and the one thing I always picture of him is when he got that slow curveball from Bill Lee in Boston, the World Series, and he hit it out in that street over the screen. Just the visual images that you can't forget about certain people.
Score was 3-0 at that time, and then that cut it to 3-2, if I recall it correctly, and launched the Reds on a comeback.
I can see Tony's eyes getting bigger and bigger as that little semi-blooper pitch curve from Bill Lee kept getting closer to him.
1-1 pitch from Gullickson is fouled away. Now, the Expos situation is interesting. Gullickson has thrown 123 pitches as of this moment. A little misleading because he threw 38 of them in the first inning, and he's been in a groove since then. But when Bill Verdon thinks about going to his bullpen, he has to realize that his ace, Jeff Reardon, is not available, out for at least 3 or 4 more days with a back injury. He didn't have him last night, and Bryn Smith lost the game in the 9th inning when Perez took him deep for the game-winning homer. Gullickson throws Perez out.
He is now retired 11 consecutively. 22 of the last 24, is that right? 23 of the last 25.
The hitter is Bo Diaz, who provided Pat Corrales with some unexpected offense from the catching position last year. At 18 homers, more than 80 RBIs, the most productive season for a Philly catcher since Stan Lopata back in 1956. And he has both Philly RBIs today, a 2-run single in the first inning. Top of the 9th, 1 out, nobody on, tied 2-2. 2-0 the count.
When this ball game started, didn't look like Gullickson would get through the first inning, did it? The value of a pitching coach when they're teaching coaches, and they have to be in these days with young pitchers like Gullickson.
Dawson lopes in and takes it. 2 quick outs. Well, Galen Cisco got another talented arm to work with this week when the Expos acquired Chris Welch from the Padres. Interesting story. Welch disobeyed Dick Williams' orders to stop trying pickoff plays. They sent the pitching coach out to the mound. Norm Sherry went out there and said, hey, stop this. And there is Welch, number 26, warming up in the Expo bullpen. And Welch replied to Sherry, when I'm on the mound, I'm the king of the hill. Well, Sherry took this particular message back to the dugout to Dick Williams. And before Welch could get back to the dugout at the end of the inning, Williams had sent someone into the clubhouse to remove Welch's name from the top of his locker. 2 days later, he'd been sent to Las Vegas, their minor league affiliate, and within a week, he'd been sold to the Expos.
You know, Welch didn't know that Dick Williams had a trick play that he wanted to move them. With runners on first and third, Dick Williams...
Maddox hits it hard. Good play. And a good scoop at the other end. Score at 6-3 and put a star next to both names. Spire and Oliver will go to the last half of the 9th, tied at 2. Spire will be the leadoff man, followed by Ramos and Little unless they decide to pinch hit. They told us it was Youppi's birthday today. He's trying to get something going in the 9th inning for the Expos. He had a little altercation with Willie Hernandez of the Cubs last year. Spire leads it off and takes inside from Altamirano. He was taunting Hernandez, the mascot was, after Willie was knocked out of a game, and Hernandez took his glove and threw it at Youppi, who dodged the glove. The glove wound up in the stands, and the fan wouldn't give it back to Hernandez. Milburn at second base. Kind of a tough hop. It handcuffed him a little, but he retires Spire.
Defensively, this ball club might be a little bit better with Milburn at second base than Joe Morgan. And that's not a knock at Joe. It's just that age has caught up with him a little bit. Offensively, there's no comparison the way Joe gets on base. They did just flash the score. The other Canadian team, Toronto Blue Jays, beat Kansas City again today. So they have now gone to 13 wins, 11 losses. And they're sneaking up on Baltimore and Boston. And yes, it is early. Bobby Cox with those young pitchers, especially Steve.
And Leal, and Clancy, and Gott.
And Randy Moffett, who came over from San Francisco and then was taken deathly ill for a couple of years. On his deathbed, came back in about 8 innings pitched. He's had 3 wins, no losses, and 1 save. Look out, he got
Altamirano hits Ramos.
It's a breaking ball. It just, he let go too soon. It was not a fastball. See if we get a pinch runner out of this. What happened?
Well, Verdon has Blackwell. Besides Carter, he'd prefer not to use Carter, but he could run for Ramos and send in Blackwell. But he doesn't. The batter is Little. Now, would you go with the sacrifice here, even though there's 1 out, and take 1 shot at it with a pinch hitter?
No. I let him swing away. Now, he might bunt on his own. Schmidt is up very close in front of the bag in case Little tries to get on that way, but and he does. But it's for a base hit, and he may have it. Schmidt was looking for the bunt, and that'll show you how good a bunter that kid is. He deadens the ball, and it almost stopped just as he gets past the dirt. Schmidt running in, looking for it, faked to go to first, thought he'd get Ramos rounding the bag, but he held close. What a bunt.
And now Gullickson's day is over, and what a day he had. We'll watch the bunt single by Little again.
This is Brian Little's 5th bunt base hit this season. And how difficult is it? You could see the mouth of Diaz yelling to Schmidt, almost as if to say no chance for a play.
Schmidt didn't throw to first. Instead, he wheeled and tried to catch Ramos, hoping that Ramos would round the bag too far at second, which wasn't the case. Now, Verdon still will stick with Ramos, who is not a fast runner at second, and he'll send up Terry Francona as the pinch hitter for Gullickson, who, after yielding 2 runs in the first inning, allowed only 2 base runners thereafter on 1 hit and a walk. He hadn't allowed a base runner of any kind since he walked Matthews in the 5th and had not allowed a base hit since a single by Schmidt in the 3rd. So what a day for Bill Gullickson, who cannot be the loser and could be the winner if the Expos score here on the last of the night.
Francona hitting at 200. As a pinch hitter, he's been 2 for 7.
Last year, Tony, he was hitting .321 before he ran into the wall and tore up his knee in St. Louis in June. And he still wears a lightweight brace on that right knee.
Now we're going to have a pinch runner going in for Montreal for Ramos at second base. Doug Flynn will go out and pinch run as Francona goes to bat. Ramos leaves the ball game. I'm glad Francona's hitting because last time we had Montreal down in Houston when Lee pitched the 1-hitter, I inadvertently said that he led the league in hitting the year, same year, or his dad led the league the same year that he was born. He actually hit .363, but he didn't have enough at bats to qualify. So now Ron Reed has gotten up, and Sid Manji, the left-hander, is coming in. We may see another switch by Verdon, go to another hitter, right-hander hitter, and maybe Carter.
So 2 on with 1 out, a pitching change, maybe a hitting change. The wheels are turning, and we'll come back to see how it turns out in a minute. Sid Manji, the left-hander, in. Terry Francona called back by Bill Verdon. Jim Wolford, the veteran right-handed hitter, checks his swing. Milburn goes to second for 1, and that's all they'll get. They'll have runners at the corners with 2 out.
There's been a lot of strategy going on during time we were away for a commercial. Manji came in to pitch, and then Pat Corrales did a double switch because Manji would have been scheduled to hit number 3
in the 10th.
He put Gross in the center field, replaced Maddox, who was the last hitter. Put Gross in center field, batting 9th, put Manji to bat in Maddox's spot. And then we saw Wolford, who pitched it for the pinch hitter Francona. The pitching change was made.
2 possible reasons why Verdon did not go with Carter, even though the left-handed pitcher's on the mound. Carter's off to a bad start with the stick, hitting under .200, and he's also not feeling well, so I guess he thought Wolford was his best bet.
Hey!
But this is his best bet. It's over.
End of the game
delivers. And a big day for Raines, who had 2 hits, a couple of walks, and a stolen base. They made him turn around. The switch hitter batting from the right side, and he delivers a 2-out single. It makes Gullickson the winner, and deservedly so. Porfi Altamirano is the loser.
And listen to these numbers. Raines batting left-handed going in today, 306. Batting right-handed, just .074. And he scribbled him off the end of the bat. Looked like he turned it over, maybe a little screwball for Manji, and he scribbed it through.
Well, you can hardly fault Pat Corrales' strategy, Tony.
No, that was Raines' first RBI of the season, right-handed.
He knew that by bringing in Manji, he'd get Francona removed, that Carter's not been hitting well. He'd rather have Wolford then in that situation, then Francona, and if it went to the next batter, he'd prefer to have Raines bat right-handed as opposed to left-handed, but as they say, that's baseball. This time he came through. The Expos are winners. We're going to 30 Rock.
Bill Mackatee and Mike Adamle back in New York, and before we leave you tonight, we want to update you on what else is happening around the major leagues. First, in the National League, the Braves have beaten the Astros. Pascual Perez, his 9th consecutive win over the last 2 seasons. Bob Horner hit his 7th home run of the year for the Braves. There's no score in San Francisco in the top of the 3rd, and the Expos, as you just saw, beat the Phillies 3-2 in the 9th.
In the American League, the Tigers and the California Angels are tied at 5. Darryl Sconier's, a rookie, has hit a home run in the 9th inning to tie that ball game. The Blue Jays beat the Royals this afternoon 7-4, despite the fact that George Brett had 2 home runs. He is now batting .466 on the year. He has hit in 18 straight games. The A's trail the Baltimore Orioles 8-6. That game is in the top of the 8th. The Boston Red Sox shut out the Seattle Mariners 8-0. Tony Armas with a grand slam home run. And the White Sox beat the Indians 4-3. And one tennis note, John McEnroe advanced to the finals of the WCT's Tournament of Champions with a straight-set victory over Guillermo Vilas, 6-1, 6-1. And a reminder, tomorrow on Sports World, you'll be seeing stock car racing action, the Alabama Talladega 500.
A complete game victory for Bill Gullickson. His mark now 3-3 on the 3-2 Expo win. Porfi Altamirano in relief of Larry Christenson, who pitched very, very well. Altamirano is the loser. His record is 1-1. The 2-out single with runners at 1st and 3rd in the last half of the 9th inning by Tim Raines, who had 2 hits today. 3-2, the Expos win it after spotting the Phillies, a 2-0 lead in the top of the 1st. The Major League Baseball Game of the Week has been brought to you by Ford and your local Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? By Miller High Life, the best beer for the best time of the day. Welcome to Miller Time. By Honda Motorcycles. Honda, follow the leader. And by Gillette Atra Razor, the twin blade razor that pivots for a close, comfortable shave. The executive producer of NBC Sports is Michael Wiseman. The coordinating producer for NBC's baseball is Harry Coyle. The telecast of today's Game of the Week has been produced by Kenneth Edmondson, directed by Dick Klein. Coordinating producer of 30 Rock, Matthew McCarthy. 30 Rock produced by David Hoffman. 30 Rock directed by Bob Levy. Technical directors Wayne Taylor and Sal Nagita. Feature producer Les Dennis. Associate directors Doug Drapert and John J. Filippelli. Associate producer Glenn Adamo. Next Saturday, our Game of the Week coverage continues with a doubleheader. First, the White Sox and the Yankees, or Montreal at St. Louis, followed by Los Angeles at San Diego, or Seattle at Oakland. Check your local listings for the games and times in your area. For Tony Kubek and our statistician Jack Levitt, I'm Bob Costas. So long from Montreal, and let's go to 30 Rock.
Hi, I'm Ozzie Smith of the St. Louis Cardinals. Ever since I was a kid, I dreamed of making the majors and getting on a baseball card. It was hard work, never giving up and never giving in to drugs. Drugs can send you so far in the left field, you may never come back. So here's the pitch. Drugs are a sure way to strike out. If you want to be a winner and see yourself on one of these, stay clean. Join the team against drugs.
The preceding message was furnished by Major League Baseball.